based on past experience. Okay, anyway.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Montclair Planning Board. Notice the meeting is published in the local paper and also posted in the lobby of this building. We are being streamed live, rather broadcast live on Channel 34, and we are streamed on YouTube. This is a meeting in a quasi-judicial proceeding, meaning that we have powers and procedures that resemble a court of law, and we are obligated to objectively determine facts and draw conclusions from the testimony that we hear before us and the matters that we hear that we can legally consider. So appropriate decorum for a judicial hearing is expected and should be maintained at all times. First on our agenda this evening is our roll call.
Chair Wynn?
Here.
Vice Chair Brodock is excused. Mr. Schwartz?
Here.
Mr. Cook?
Here.
Counselor Schlager?
Here.
Ms. Willis?
Here.
Mr. Rooney?
Here.
Mr. Ianwali?
Here.
Ms. Lockman? Here. Mr. Barr is excused. Mr. Gilmer?
Here.
Okay.
We have minutes from our August 12th meeting.
I received changes from Ms. Lockman and from Ms. Willis. Are there any other changes to the minutes?
Motion to approve with changes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Okay.
Okay, we have the resolution from 59 Glenridge Avenue, LLC.
Motion to approve.
Who made that motion? Okay, Steve? Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstention.
Okay.
Okay, and that brings us to new business and the application of the Montclair Art Museum.
Chairman, members of the board, nice to see you again. My name is Richard Skolnick. I'm representing the Art Museum. If I may, Chairman, a brief introduction before our witnesses.
Sure.
The property that is subject to tonight's application is identified on the tax maps as lot 1406, lots 1 and 3, with an address of 3 South Mountain Avenue. We're located in the R-O zone.
Gotta start again, sir.
I get paid by the word, so we can keep doing it. Block 1406, lots 1 and 3, 3 South Mountain, R-O sub A zone. We're here tonight for site plan approval. The proposal includes construction of a reflecting pool at the museum's entrance, as well as a level or flat area directly to the south of the museum building. It also includes what I'll call a water wall adjacent to this proposed level area. In terms of zoning, museums are a permitted conditional use in the zone, and the changes before you do not impact any of those conditional use standards. There is one C variance, and that's for the proposed height of a portion of the water wall. I'm going to suggest the water wall is really an architectural feature and not a traditional retaining wall at the edge of the property. 7 feet is permitted for these walls, and the proposed wall is 10 feet at its maximum with a 3-foot differential. Then there's a fence of 3.8 feet for a total height of just under 14 feet. We're going to have some planning testimony on this sole variance that's before you. A couple of suggestions. First, we're really unsure if the height limitation on retaining walls was meant to actually regulate a situation where the retaining wall is an architectural feature rather than a wall that impacts air, light, and open space on the edge of a property. Second, we'll suggest that the height of the wall really presents no detriment to the community or to the zoning ordinance. It's in the middle of the property and barely visible to anyone not on museum grounds. No impact, we'll suggest to you, of any immediately adjacent neighbor. And finally, we'll suggest on C2 grounds, that's the flexible planning variance, that the benefits to the community associated with the retaining wall and the plaza that it will allow, along with the manner in which the proposed changes further the museum's artistic and community mission, clearly outweigh any detriment to the community or any neighbor. I note that the application has been determined to be a minor site plan requirement here, and we believe that the sole variance can be justified from a planning standpoint, and that the proposed changes overall will significantly support the museum's artistic and charitable mission. So with that, Chairman, I have 3 witnesses. I expect our affirmative testimony will take probably about 45 minutes without any questions. I appreciate there'll be a number of questions along the way, but just want to give you a little idea on our lineup. So we're going to start with Lora Urbanelli, the director of the museum, Paul Sionas coming after that, and then Paul Anderson, a civil engineer who's also recognized as a planner. So we'll qualify him, and he'll provide some planning testimony on that one C2 variant. So that's our lineup. We're ready to go.
All right.
Okay, we'll call our first witness, Lora Urbanelli. And if I could have her sworn in, please.
Ms. Urbanelli, would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Would you please state your full name and business affiliation for the record?
My name is Lora Urbanelli, and I am the director of the Montclair Art Museum. Sorry?
Put the button.
Oh, it is on.
I'm going to pull it back to you a little
Okay.
bit, might be a little more comfortable.
Okay. Is that
work
better?
for you?
Good.
Is that better?
Speak like he does. Very
I'll do my best.
Good.
I've been accused of being a loud talker. It's a problem with being the third son in a family, but
Is that how they
let
say
us
it?
know. Let us know if there's an issue. Ms. Urbanelli, what's your position with the museum, and what's your involvement in the project that's in front of the board tonight?
I'm the executive director of the museum. I've been there for about 10 years now, and I'm very involved in the project. We've been working with the board for a number of years, actually, putting this plan together, board and community members. So I appreciate and thank you very much for allowing me to have this opening comment. We're here tonight to present a plan that improves the grounds of the Montclair Art Museum in order to enhance the museum's art and educational service. Museum's mission, as I think many of you know, for over a century has been to function as the artistic and educational showcase for this community. And it's evolved along the way in order to keep pace with our audiences and stay relevant to the times that we live in. After 2 decades of internal expansions, many of you will remember them. They doubled our gallery space, added major classrooms, we added scholarships, established the Vance Wall Art Education Center, the Geyer Community Art Studio. We're now looking to move outside the walls of the museum to present an enhancement to our grounds that we call the Art Park at MAM. And the aim is to bring the museum's to the museum's grounds a similar energy as that to which we accomplished inside. This plan creates an idyllic and inspiring destination for townspeople and visitors, a place for the public to escape, enjoy sculpture and nature under open skies in spacious settings. The Art Park, all funded by private donations, models the promotion of public art in Montclair for everyone's learning and enjoyment, and underscores the museum's position as an artistic anchor in this town, the region's hub for arts, culture, and entertainment. As you're about to hear, the details of this plan turn an unusable steep side yard into a flat, functional public green, and that it to be enjoyed by all concerned, no matter what their mobility issues. There will be spaces for socializing on the grass and seating areas with gardens, as well as an atmospheric waterfall that you heard Rick mention earlier. It will create grounds for the public to enjoy for free and in areas for our students to come outside and make art. A reflecting pond encircled by seating at the museum's front entrance will provide another beautiful gathering space for the community. We're delighted to hear the passion that has recently been expressed for the sculpture The Sunvow, which is currently occupying the grass oval there. And our plan is to relocate this beloved work to a lovely new spot on the grounds, yet to be determined, which will bring the work actually more to eye level, make it more accessible to the public, and where we think it can be better appreciated. Then the museum's professional staff and community volunteers, many community volunteers, will identify an artist who will be commissioned to create an iconic new sculpture for our new century that will sit within that reflecting pool. The re-landscaped front yard will reveal more of MAM's historic facade, creating an open and welcoming feel. And the Art Park's sculpture zones will feature MAM's permanent collection, as well as allow for us to borrow works of art and create site-specific installations. Almost unique among institutions in Montclair, the Montclair Art Museum has thrived for 105 years by both preserving and exhibiting its historic art collections, but also by adapting its exhibitions and programs to changing times. Our newly acquired contemporary art like Nick Cave's Sound Suit, Kara Walker's Silhouette Masterpiece, Hank Willis Thomas's Outdoor Thought Bubble Bench, these are among our most popular works of art on campus. Museums must live and adapt to serve their communities, or they will slowly become irrelevant and die. Montclair means art today because the museum has stayed relevant to the life of Montclair. I thank you for your time and consideration of this exciting plan, which we feel is a real gift to the community. Thank you.
Questions from the board?
Oh, are you going to be here?
I'm
Gonna be
staying.
here? Okay, we'll come back to it.
Okay.
I guess I have a question. You mentioned that the project was developed in conversation with the board and the community.
Mm-hmm.
So can you tell me about that process?
Well, the board is drawn from the community, and we have been actually for years off and on thinking about ways to renovate our grounds to make them more enjoyable and accessible. And since we do have sculpture already on the grounds, how to sort of more strategically create a sculpture garden out of those spaces instead of randomly setting sculpture around. But over the years, as we've worked with a number of landscape designers off and on, we've had professional staff, we've had consultant staff, and we have volunteers from the community, both our board members who are volunteers and also others who join our facilities and grounds committees conversations, looking at the plans and making design recommendations. And we've come up with what we think is, after a number of years, a really great plan that both addresses the greenery of the grounds, the actual landscape of the grounds, and also some public programming spaces like this great plaza on the side yard.
So did you consult at all with an historic preservationist? Because being that the property is on the National and State Historic Preservation Register?
We have gone in front of the Historic Preservation Commission with this project. We had 2 meetings earlier this year. and
But in
had
the planning
great
process?
discussions. No one specifically professional in that area, but a number of us well-schooled in that area.
Mhm. Do you consider the grounds as being part of the historic site? Or are you just thinking about the building as being a historic site?
We consider the grounds to have a great history, obviously. You know, we know Howard Van Vleck was very involved at a certain point in the grounds. The grounds existed for 30 years before Howard came along to, or even longer, came along to do the work that he did to change the grounds. We see them more as part of the living artistic property of the museum. They were always designed to have sculpture on view. The grounds from the very beginning were thought of as a sort of living exhibition space. And we think of those grounds not just as beautiful botanical setting, But the way that we think about the indoor exhibition spaces, we have, as you know, over the years, we've had lots of sculptures come and go. We've had projects come and go. We had that wonderful silverware tree that was on our corner for about a year. We had contemporary art video monitors on the grounds for about 5 years. So we think of it as a very active, lively part of the artistic program of the museum.
You said you're going to commission a piece of art for the reflecting pool.
That's right.
Is that intended to be permanent, or is that site going to be a site where you will, have different pieces of art come and go?
It's meant to be a part of our collection. The piece that we'll commission will be a part of our collection, and we expect that at some time in the future, perhaps more distant future than a couple of years, someone else may decide to move that to a different part of the grounds and put something else in that reflecting pool. But for the time being, we think of this as an iconic work we'd like to see the town fall in love with and have as their new representation of what the museum is in the 21st century for as long as the folks involved stewarding the museum decide to keep it in place. But it will become part of our permanent collection, which means that it may move.
And in terms, in terms of, you had mentioned that the grounds would enable more capacity for displaying outdoor art. And so much of the art that's there will still remain outdoors and potentially be repositioned.
Correct.
But also there'll be more capacity for other art to be added to the collection, the outdoor collection. In terms of pieces that are part of the permanent collection outdoors, will those remain as well after these plans? And then also, if you could just speak briefly on how you make decisions in terms of what is part of the permanent collection versus the rotating collection. I think that would be helpful just to understand the benefit to the community of this whole plan.
Sure. The first question you asked about whether the works of art already on the grounds will remain on the grounds, the answer is yes. We will find new sightings for most of them because the grounds will change, in some ways pretty drastically. So we will find beautiful new spots for the works and reposition them on the grounds. As far as how we make those decisions, first of all, let me just say we have many thousands of works of art in our collection, both the outdoor sculptures that you see, but then many, many things inside the building. And as part of our artistic program, every year we work with our curators and our board of trustees. We have a special art committee that includes members of the general public who are not just on the board of trustees. And with that group, we make decisions about what to acquire, what to show, why we acquire certain things. We are specifically an American art museum. We have a Native American collection. We have roughly 13,000 works of art and that we've been acquiring over the last 100+ years. And those switch and change all the time. And that's part of what we do, is that variety of activity in the galleries and on the grounds. And sometimes we borrow works of art. So you might remember our Cezanne in American Art or the Matisse in American Art shows that we've done recently in the last 8 years, 10 years. Our curators would plan those exhibitions. Takes sometimes years and years to put those projects together, and some work is borrowed and some work comes from the collection, and that's how we do our artistic program. So whether inside or out, that's how it works. Bless you.
Right, yes. And then just following on with the artistic programming at the site, it does seem, so you mentioned that there would be additional capacity added. Can you speak to any of the other benefits? One that I just noted from reviewing the plans over the last few days, it seems as though you could it'd be more conducive to outdoor tours perhaps for groups that visit. Are there other benefits to the overall plan and what the art museum would be able to facilitate?
Yeah, we really see this plan, especially the side entrance plan, like a town square, a place for people to come and just relax, have lunch, enjoy the water wall, enjoy the sculpture grounds. And that we're taking a really steep hill that right now is actually a little dangerous for our kids that run around the grounds. You imagine the summer camp with 800 kids who come in the summer. And we're flattening that out to make it a much more functional space and an enjoyable space and also an accessible space so that anyone who has mobility issues can actually enjoy that gathering space and an area on the side yard. In the front, we feel very similarly. It's a place where neighbors can come and sit and enjoy the reflecting pond or the sculpture on the grounds, have lunch, enjoy the outside without even paying to come into the building. So, we think very highly of public art, and I've been involved, as many of the staff and board have been involved in discussions for years in Montclair's interest in public art, and we see this as a real sort of landmark in that way to have a sculpture garden that can be just enjoyed at leisure in the community.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
As you indicated, things change. Institutions grow, they modify over the years. The difficulty here is that this is a named historic site on the National Register.
Right.
And so there is an integration or potential conflict with what the particulars are for maintaining that designation. So I note the Historic Preservation Commission has picked that up, and I believe that there is actually another report beyond the HPC's report with from a consultant on that. I'm curious, as my colleague mentioned, how much you've considered that integration. Certainly a reflecting pool, sculpture garden are common elements now found in museums. I was at the Norton down in West Palm, and they have a very similar element there, and it's quite lovely, and certainly the site could be made more user-friendly. I think the issue might be for some how you are integrating your plans with what the designation is for the National Register, and how you've considered that in terms of the specifications. And I think that has to be fleshed out a little more.
Yeah, I'm happy to address that. I'll venture that we have already done a lot to the site over the years, as museums do. For instance, we have those Spencer Finch illuminated windows on the facade of the building, because museums all over the country, the Norton included, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Philadelphia Museum where I grew up, beautiful historic nationally registered buildings, and there's an absolutely brand new crazy contemporary piece on the steps of the Art Museum. So museums do respect their historic place, and many museum buildings, because many of our buildings were built around the same time. You see temple structures all the time. Those are historic and beautiful parts of our cultural past, but museums believe that integrating that with a contemporary artistic expression is what museums should do. So, I don't know if you know the Frank Furness building at the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts in Philadelphia, one of the most gorgeous buildings of its kind in America, had a pediment outside its front door installed with a cartoon figure, because that's what is happening in contemporary art, and that's what their students and audience wanted to see in a mix with other historic and beautiful, classical sculptures inside and out. So it has to be lively. It has to be reflective of our current day, or we're stuck in amber and not serving our community. And we don't think that that's necessarily counter to the structure or negates our historic gravitas.
Could you address what your plans are for the existing piece of sculpture there now?
The sundial?
Yes.
We're going to relocate it on the grounds. We have not yet determined exactly where. It's not going away. It's going to be on view. You'll note right now the sculpture sits on a large boulder. It sits on a green slight rise. If you are in a wheelchair, you can't get anywhere near that sculpture. What we'd like to do is take it out of that green circle and place it somewhere on level ground. I think we might even be able to submerge that boulder a little bit into the ground so that you can actually see the work closer up, and you don't need, to be restricted from it if you have any kind of mobility issues. We love that sculpture as much as anyone, and I will repeat that we're delighted that there is such passion about that piece. I think we all share that moment when we saw something as a kid or that we grew up with a work of art that we love and we never want to see go away. It's not going away. We're just going to recite it, and we're going to use that moment in front of the museum to do something that the town, we hope, will fall in love with equally, but might be a little more of a contemporary avocation.
And that's your and the museum's artistic judgment that another location on the grounds would be appropriate going forward.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
And since we're doing broad strokes here, can you just get into what you intend to do with the grounds themselves as it relates to the arboretum and horticultural aspects? Because, as I understand, that's also considered a part of the significance of the grounds as it relates to the preservation designation.
I think you'll hear in great detail from Paul Sionas what the plantings are going to look like. We have great respect for Howard Van Vleck and what he did, but again, I'll just submit that even Howard's change to the grounds came 50 years after the museum, 40 years after the museum was founded. So that was a major change to the founders and their thinking about the grounds of the museum. We have great respect for that arboretum of the past, but much of that has been changed even when, in 2000, when we expanded the building and doubled the size of our building, much of Howard's arboretum disappeared.
Right.
Many of the trees that are left have been damaged by storms. They're 80, 90 years old. We have long since stopped doing arboretum tours on the grounds because the specimens are just a shadow, in some cases, of what they should be. So again, we don't disrespect our past. We plan to use Howard's guidelines for native plantings, not for his proclivity for foreign plantings, but his native plantings, when we're thinking about planting the grounds. But I'll let Paul go into that in more detail.
So it's your testimony that what you're offering is an enhancement
Absolutely.
to what was there previously and a repair of elements that have been damaged in the past?
Yes, sir.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
I have just another question about the Sunval sculpture.
Yeah.
I understand that was a gift of one of the founding
Yes.
members.
Yes.
Were there any restrictions on where that could be placed?
No.
So it could be placed anywhere you want?
In
Yeah.
fact, the Sunvow is part of is one of an addition. As you know, a lot of bronze sculptures are cast in multiples. There's one at the Metropolitan Museum of Art inside the building, not on a boulder, on a platform in a beautiful spot. There were no restrictions. Also, Mr. Evans gave us something like 45 paintings, American paintings. There were no restrictions on those. And we don't have them all on view in the same spot for the last 105 years. We move things around just as part of our program.
And one other question, Ms. Urbanelli,
Sure.
related to what will occur in that location. The Sunval sculpture is gorgeous year-round. So given that there'll be a water feature there now, can you comment on what may occur during the winter seasons
Right.
in that space?
Yeah, it's a good question, and one that we talked about a lot on the design committee. First of all, we're planning on having the basin of the reflecting pool be made out of a beautiful material. We don't know, we haven't picked the exact stone yet, but we're hoping that, water or no water, it will be a beautiful material. And it will, in the winter, act more like a pediment for the sculpture that will be there. We don't think that it will be, it's not going to be like looking at an empty swimming pool. It's going to be a shallow reflecting pool, and we hope that the sculpture itself will really take prominence. The pool will just be a cooling and beautiful reflective spot in the those months when the water is in it. And we actually don't know just how many months there won't be water in there. Sorry for the double negatives. We don't know how, it might only be January and February where we drain in the hardest part of the winter, and maybe we can add water back in as soon as early spring.
Good, thank you.
Mhm. Any other questions?
Other questions from the board? Any questions from the public of this witness concerning what she's testified to so far?
I had one question.
I'm sorry, could you state your name and?
Is that, okay.
Please identify yourself for the record.
Lisanne Renner, 42 Godfrey Road, Montclair. I know you said that there's no deed restrictions on this sundial. Are there any correspondence or any other kind of material in the library's, in the museum's archives or any other archives that speak to William Evans's intent or desires for what would happen with that sculpture, where it should be located and such along those lines?
Not that I have ever seen, no.
Has anybody looked for that?
Well, we do have a curatorial file on the sculpture, and I'm pretty sure that it's been well examined, but...
Are you pretty sure or certain? I mean, who looked through that file and what did they see?
The sculpture has not a huge record about, our object files are not that large, and it has been sort of understood for a very long time through lots of examination of the material in that file that there is no restriction on that piece. We actually don't accept objects with restrictions as part of our protocol.
Okay, but I'm not speaking specifically of legal restrictions, and maybe something that wouldn't be specifically in a file on the sundial, but there might be letters from Evans to the committee that founded the museum, for example, just talking about his desires and hopes and wishes for the placement and future use of the sundial. Is there anything like that?
Not that I'm aware of.
But has anybody looked for that?
I know that the file has been recently examined by the curator, but I am not aware of anything that you're referring to, like what you're referring to.
refresh our
Yeah.
recollection?
Yeah.
No, I don't. I'm wondering if anybody has looked through the archives,
the curatorial
for
staff.
correspondence and such.
We're here to get the information out, so if you have something, let us know, and we'll be happy to evaluate.
Okay, but my question was partly whether anyone has looked, anyone on the staff.
I have not looked, but I know the
Okay.
curatorial staff has, as we have been doing this work over the last 4 years, looked at the material on record for the objects that we steward every day.
Thank you.
Kathleen Bennett, 10 Glenwood Road, resident of Montclair, and a member of the museum for probably 40 years.
Thank you for that.
Anyway, my question is, you just testified that the new sculpture will be placed in the pond.
Right.
Could you please illuminate how that will be accessible to somebody in a wheelchair, if you're concerned about people touching sculptures?
Well, you'll be able to get right up to the edge of the pond. I'm not talking about touching it so much as just being able to experience it one-on-one. Right now, if you're in a wheelchair, you can get right up to the edge of the green oval, and the sculpture is not only at a distance from you, but high up. And the details of the sculpture are high up. And what we're looking for is something that has a presence, that if you are, in a wheelchair or have mobility issues, you'll be able to get right up to the wall, sit on the wall, enjoy the piece right in front of you. Does that make
You're
sense?
speaking about the new sculpture?
I'm talking about the new sculpture.
Not the existing sundial?
Correct.
Okay, and then you just testified that the grass slope that's existing now, where the new water feature will be in,
Mhm.
is steep.
Yes.
And you feel it's a danger to children tumbling?
Kids do tumble down
Well,
that.
how is that more dangerous than a hard surface of 10 or 12, or how many feet the the wall will be?
We're going to restrict access, as you'll hear in the presentation. There will be very restricted access to the top of that wall. No one will be able to get to
No,
the
I
top
did
of
hear
that
that.
wall.
I heard that
Yeah.
from the, when
Right.
I was at the HPC meeting. But there was some discussion as to how you would actually restrict that access with landscaping. I know there wasn't going to be a fence up, but my point
No, there is
is,
going to be a
how is
fence.
the Hearts?
Ask a question, Ms. Letter.
Okay.
We have plenty of time, but you have to let her answer the question after you ask her.
There actually is going to be a fence on top of of the wall, or a wire, I guess fence is the right word to use.
Okay. And then are you, do you know the term cultural landscape? Are you familiar
Yeah,
with that?
I do.
Okay,
yeah.
so it's a geographical area including the cultural and natural resources.
Mhm.
And you've just testified that you are sensitive to that, with what you're planning to do now with the sculpture and the pond and the new water feature.
Right.
And you feel that what your plan is goes with the definition that the Secretary of Interior Standards and the National Park Service
I do, but
define it
we're not
as.
a part of the National Park Service. But I do feel that what we're planning to do is very respectful of the history of that site. And I think that you will see, when it comes to fruition, that it's a beautiful park that has a nod to its past and is living in the current day.
And my final question is that when the Sunvow was created to much acclaim, and the sculptor, Herman Atkins McNeil, he described this as 19th century figural sculpture.
Mhm.
And his intent was to have the closing age giving a lesson to the new age. So that is a message for our current time.
Right.
So I'm just curious as
I think
why
that-
that is not a message that you're respecting now.
I think that message will be louder and clearer when someone can actually see the sculpture close up. The sculpture will be on the grounds in a beautiful location, and actually you'll be able to get closer to it and actually appreciate the work of art and that message. But where it is now, it's not as easy to see that and learn from that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
My name is Mary Krugman. I'm a longtime resident of Montclair. I live 2 blocks from the museum and a museum member. I understand at a community meeting on June 26th, a number of nearby residents expressed some concerns about what was going to happen there, and noise, parking, litter. We've been wrestling with parking for 5 years now, while the downtown has been under construction. It has been most disconcerting. And I wonder if you've studied the impact of such issues in relationship to the increased nighttime attendance and even the daytime attendance that you hope this will
We haven't
accomplish.
performed a parking study. None was requested. We don't need a parking variance. There's been no parking study.
Mr. Skolnick, I'll need you to speak into the
Oh, I'm sorry.
microphone so we can
All
hear.
right. Richard Skolnick, we have not done a parking survey or study as part of this. It hasn't been asked for, and there's no variances that are associated with parking.
That's parking. And how about the increased use? How about the showing of a film on a wall surface that is facing 2 apartment buildings? I think that there's considerable concern about that neighborhood.
There may be, but your question is, have we done a study? And the
Have you
answer
done
is
any
no.
studies
No,
on usage or proposed usage or expected usage? Or
It's hard to know how many more people might come to the site. Really, our intent is not necessarily to draw more people, it's to make it more pleasant for the people who are there, and to allow for a better circulation, a better programmatic use of the site. But we're actually not entering into this project with the sole intent of bringing in masses of people, more people, than we already do on occasion. I think it will be, we don't expect much change, frankly.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any plans to put in a restaurant?
No. Plain and simple. No.
Frank Godlewski, Essex Fells, and I've been a curator for the New York Armory Arts Week for several years, and I graduated from Montclair Academy, MKA, very close to the site. And my mother used to live across the street from the museum. And my question is, because I'm very perplexed about the respect for the cultural landscape and our collective memory of the museum, I'm wondering if you cannot consider moving forward with your proposal on the side of the museum, which has always undergone change since the museum was founded. I believe there was even a house there at one time. I love the idea of using the side of the museum, but I totally disagree with everything, respectfully, that you've said about the front of the museum and moving the sunvow and handicap access. It's just totally irrelevant. But anyway, can you not move forward with your plan on the side without harming the cultural landscape that's in front of the museum?
I'll have to object to the question, but try to answer if you can.
I was just going to make a comment about ADA accessibility, and one of our top priorities is accessibility. And in fact, it's required of us because of the kind of institution we are, and when we go for grants, and believe me, we depend greatly on foundation grants and government grants. That's a huge requirement for us. So this will actually be a very positive thing for us to be presenting a way to make the grounds more usable for all of the public. And in terms of the cultural landscape, I suppose one could say that the way the museum was founded originally, if we're talking about that as its cultural landscape in 1914, they certainly didn't envision a parking lot. They didn't envision the expansion of the museum backward and, all of that building and hardscape that took place there. So I just, again, will say I think that we have to evolve with our times, and we have to evolve in a way that allows us to meet the needs of our community and our audience, and allows us to fulfill our mission. And we feel that this does just that, without doing anything but enhancing the grounds.
May I ask another question?
Okay with me.
Regarding the involvement of the community in this process, and your answer to that was that it was the board who represented the community, but it's my understanding that there are not a lot of community members on the board. And I mean, I've never heard of, there are some, but not all of them, and I feel that it was exclusive to the community.
Actually, Frank, I think 90% of our board of 43 plus people, maybe closer to 45 now, are residents of this area. I mean, Montclair and Essex Fells and Glen Ridge area.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yep.
Adriana O'Toole, 48 South Willow. I have a question about the new statue. Why not just put that in this new location and leave this current one where it is? It stands up, it's visible from Bloomfield Avenue. It has become a symbol of Montclair, the way that Apple is in Minneapolis or the Ball is in the city. Moving it, I think, would really be a deterrent. And the question that I think Kathleen brought up about some research on information about it, Betty Evans, who was a past town council member's father, was the man that I gave or grandfather was the other. And her niece, I checked with her about some bird club information, because Jean Clark was involved with that. There might be some literature. She does have some of Jean Clark's paperwork, and she might also have some of Betty Evans, if there was any interest in pursuing that in some history papers, I don't know. But I would really like to see the statue stay where it is and develop your plans to honor some new architectural sculpture and give it its due in a new location.
Thank you, Adriana.
Good evening, my name is David Greenbaum, 91 Lloyd Road, Montclair. I love the Montclair Art Museum. It's such a great asset to our community, and bringing new things and new life and new perspectives is something that's great, and I applaud. Several of your exhibits have been absolutely wonderful. Your cocktails on Fridays or Thursdays, Fridays?
First Thursday.
For Thursdays. I'll drive by and I'll see people there and I'll run over. So it's just a great asset to the community, and I think what you're proposing, being on the HPC, I was privy to the presentation, but you're making a point about the removal and movement of the sun vow sculpture. And as I'm listening, I'm thinking to myself that when I was a young child and I used to go to Northeast School.
David, your question intro is becoming a bit wordy, and I've been trying to be patient with everyone who's been making statements. But this is time for questions, okay?
I'm getting to the question.
Your question should be about her testimony.
Yes.
So I don't know why we have to know about your childhood in order for you to ask a question about her testimony.
You're about to find out.
So please get to the question.
You're about to find out.
Please get to the question.
So when I was a student at Northeast,
Please get to the question.
I came and saw the American Indian exhibit.
David.
Excuse me, this is the question.
No, David. Make no mistake. Make no mistake.
This is the question.
That the chair runs the meeting, not you. All right? Now, I've just given you as nice a warning as I can. If you can't respect that and get to your question, ask your question, then we may have to do something else, all right? So please continue, but please get to your question.
I was about to, you just interrupted me. So my question is, the American Indian exhibit that's been there for all these years and hasn't moved, is that able to be moved?
We actually just changed the entire thing around over the last 4 years, David. It's completely new. It's in the same room, but it's completely new objects and reinstallation. And actually, we're changing it again this fall. So if you come in a few weeks for our opening, you'll see brand new pieces in the middle of the floor and lots of excitement in there.
Because I've always felt that there was somewhat static for all these years, seeing the same exhibit with all that exhibition
It's actually brand new.
All right, well, that's good.
Yeah.
That was my question.
Okay.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
It has to do with permanence.
Any other questions from the public? Counselor?
Call our next witness, Paul Sionas. Thank you.
Before we actually do that, I think we need to mark the exhibits of this application.
So A1 is the application, A2 is the certification of taxes paid, A3 is the certification of publication, proof of publication, A4 is the affidavit of service, A5 is a 13-page...
Ms. Talley, can you go a little slower? I cannot write that.
I can send you a copy of this in the
Okay, I'd
morning.
like to have the exhibit, so, okay.
A5 is the 13-page civil drawing plan set from Anderson Consulting.
I think there's 13 plans in total. The plans that we received,
Is it?
1 of 13, but page 2 is sheet 9 of 13. So I think that the civil set is here with the...
How many?
There's 13 with architectural and civil.
Okay, it includes the architectural and civil, okay. And it's dated February 9th, 2019.
Well, I think there was 2 sets because we did the
Well, then it went...
Anderson
So what I'm marking, for everybody's, so everybody knows, what I am marking as A5 is the plan set, says SP1, sheet 1 of 13, Paul Anderson, it's stamped April 1st, and it's got a date of February 9th, 2019. That was what was submitted and given to all the board members. Okay, what we've had changes to since are the architectural drawings from Sionas.
Okay, but that 13-page sheet, the cover is a cover sheet, each one of the lists a bunch of plans, you're not including what we've done. So I think you should grab this down.
It's 5 pages. Yeah. All right, I'll read it into the record. It's a 5-page submission, SP1, SP2, SP3, SP4, and SP5. And then the last page is the survey. A6 is a 7-page set of architectural drawings prepared by Sionas Architecture, dated originally
March 11th.
March 11th, 2019, revised April 25th, 2019. We then received A7, which are revised sheets L1, L2, and L5 from Sionas Architecture, and those were dated May 28th, 2019.
Well, the set that we got was received by the planning board August 20th. It's a 7-page set. It has those 5 28 revised sets. We also got one which was dated August 6th, just those 3 sheets, and they're exactly the same. So I think we can throw out the small one, which is dated the 6th, and keep the 7-page set, which is dated by the planning board opinion.
May 28th, right? Right. A8 are the previous resolutions for the subject property. A9 is the drainage report from Anderson Consulting Services dated February 25th, 2019. A10 is the report from Suburban Consulting Engineers dated April 29th, 2019. A11 is the report from the HPC dated June 27th, 2019. A12 is the planning report dated August 15th, 2019. And A13 is the report from Suburban Consulting Engineers dated August 23rd, 2019. Am I missing
We have a
something?
handout.
And we
that we'll
want to
get
mark,
to.
and that'll be the same as the PowerPoint?
Yes.
So why don't we mark that PowerPoint as A14?
Hey, I'm sorry, did we have Mr. Sionas sworn yet?
Not yet.
No. I have a Paul, when you submitted those 3 separate sheets,
Right. Those were the 3 revised pages, and then
But it's still-
after that, you asked us to submit a whole new set, including
okay,
those 3.
the whole new set.
Which is just what, throw the 3 out, or recycle them.
So the 3 that we're throwing out, I had marked as A7. I have L1, L2, and L5. We're throwing that out, and what are we replacing it with?
The plan, 7-sheet plan set that has the sheet date.
I don't,
That's the,
All put the
right.
I don't have that in my, I don't have that.
2, 3, 4, and 5.
I don't have that. Obviously, that was sent to the board, and I don't have it in the file. All right.
And my sheet didn't come with a cover page. This one did. Paul's, this submission didn't have a cover page.
All right. Let's just mark yours then.
There is yellow highlighting on it.
That's
also.
okay, I just don't have it. So that's going to be A7. Just make sure.
Are we ready?
Yes.
Just a minute, Rick. It's okay.
Sorry.
Do you want this back?
Yeah, I do.
Right, it's just that.
I don't care about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But there's no cover page. We'll have to get that somehow. Okay. All right. You want to just let, no, I'll leave it with you. You can let me know. Okay. Mr. Chairman, you ready to proceed?
Sounds good.
Counsel?
I know.
Sir, do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Would you please state your full name and business affiliation for the record?
Sure. My name is Paul Sionas. I'm the principal of Sionas Architecture, located at 8 Hillside Avenue, Montclair, New Jersey.
Chairman, I'm going to submit Mr. Sionas as an expert in the field of architecture and landscape architecture. I understand he has been qualified in front of this board on numerous occasions.
Once or twice. Yes, we'll
Okay.
accept them.
This is the third time.
We appreciate that. Mr. Sionas, can you go through the plans and in light of some of the questions we've had?
Yes.
As well?
So basically, I've prepared a PowerPoint, which you do have in front of you, and also it's on the screen. So this is an application, as we've heard. It's a minor site plan application for the Montclair Art Museum that proposes to make certain improvements to the grounds surrounding the property. No changes are proposed to the building. No changes are proposed for the parking. So in other words, there's no decrease in the number of parking spaces and also no increase in the number of parking spaces. And as we've heard, this is a conforming site plan with a request for one variance, which is for the height of the proposed interior retaining wall on the property. The slide number 2 is slide number 2 is the survey map, except it's been colored for better visibility. And as you can see, and as most of you know, this property, it's a large irregular shaped lot. It's 3.7 acres in size. It has 539 feet of frontage along South Mountain Avenue. It has 216 feet of frontage on Bloomfield Avenue. And on St. Luke's Place, the property is 315.84 feet. There's access to the property from 3 driveways. So there's one driveway on South Mountain Avenue, one existing driveway. There's a second driveway just to the south of that on South Mountain Avenue, and then there's a third driveway off of St. Luke's Place. So the property is accessed by a total of 3 driveways. The property is, even though it's been there since 1914, it's in the RO zone, and it's a permitted conditional use within this zone. Next slide. This is a rendering that was in the museum records. This was a rendering that was done between 1910 and 1913. So the building was dedicated, it was constructed and then dedicated in 1914. The interesting thing about the rendering is you could see the circular drive in the front of the building. That's still in place. There was a circular water feature that was proposed but was never built. There was a large elm tree just to the rear or to the east side of that water feature. That apparently at the time of construction was about 100 years old, and then it was taken down in 1957 as a result of Dutch elm disease. And yet you could see the original idea of the museum was to have a very graceful or elegant drop-off. Even though this was 1910, 1913, and cars had only been around for a few years, they still showed a chauffeur-driven vehicle, and all of the men in the top hats and women in dresses, going to the museum. So this was the original idea for the museum, and then as you can see, Albert Ross was the architect chosen to design the museum. We were asked, as part of our plans, we looked through some of the historical background to the museum, and we looked at a map that was referred to as the Van Vleck Arboretum Plan. And this is a plan that was done around 1988 and then updated a few years later, 1995. As you can see on this map, and what I've circled on the map in particular, is how the property has changed over time. The part along St. Luke's Place, for example, that area is completely different. So this is from 1988. These are all plants on this map that Howard Van Vleck, according to the museum records, Howard Van Vleck would actually plan and plant and prune plants on the property. Some of the plants he would actually take from his property on North Mountain Avenue and bring them over to the Art Museum property. So in 1988, he actually drew a plan of what had been planted or what was still to be planted, and he listed everything in the column on the right-hand side. He also put together a booklet called The Guide to the Van Vleck Arboretum at the Montclair Art Museum. And in that booklet, Mr. Van Vleck talks about his appreciation for the beauty of trees and shrubs. And it didn't matter if they were from Asia or Africa or from America, but rather he showed that all of these things were mixed on the property just as they are on the Van Vleck property. And this is at odds with current thinking, as we've heard at previous planning board meetings. Current thinking in horticulture is to try to use native plant material. It's better for wildlife, and it's also better for water conservation. But the beautiful plantings that were put there were put anywhere from starting in the 1940s. Howard started planting them up until the late 70s, mid-1980s, one by one. Many of those plantings, or most of those plantings, are still there at the front of the property. That circular area, as I said, it's different. There's a caretaker's house that I'm pointing to. That's no longer there. There's a garage on the property that was no longer there. There's a large, I'll show you, there's a large addition placed in the back of the museum. So a lot of this has changed. As I said, the plants or the trees within the property are still there. There's the circular area in the front of the property. On the drawing, it shows a Atlas cedar tree that was planted by Howard Van Vleck in 1957 after the elm tree died. And also there's a Hinoki cypress shown next to that cedar tree. The Hinoki cypress is no longer there. And then the bottom right photo on this slide shows the Montclair Art Museum in 1981. And this is a photo obtained from the public library, and it shows the cedar tree, how beautiful it was. And the intent was to plant that cedar tree in the front of the property based on the beauty of the cedar tree and what it would develop into. And probably in 1981, that was probably the peak of its shape. It was a beautiful tree. The next slide number 6 is an aerial photo. This is from Bing Maps, and the purpose is that purpose of showing this is that it shows the continual evolution of the museum property. The circular area on the right side shows where the major building expansion took place between 2000 and 2008. In addition to that major building expansion, there was the loading dock. There was the caretaker's house, and the separate garage were also not on the property by 2000 to 2008. And then for the first time, the museum provided barrier-free parking stalls. So they provided barrier-free or handicap parking spaces towards the top of the property, the west side of the property. They never had that before. They also acquired land at the bottom part of the slide on St. Luke's Place, and they expanded the parking lot. They also created a new handicapped or barrier-free entry on the south side of the museum, making it easy for people of all abilities to get from the parking lot on the sidewalk and right into that side entrance, which is known as the Harris entrance. The next slide, slide number 7. So in 2017, we were hired by the Art Museum Board, and they gave us a lot of challenges. And the first thing they asked us to look at was studying opportunities for people of all abilities to experience artwork on the exterior of the building. I skipped ahead. So they asked us to look at studying how people of all physical abilities could experience artwork on the exterior of the building without any barriers. As we've heard, there's a steep incline on the south side of the building. People could look to the left or to the right from that sidewalk, but they can't get up that hill or down the hill in a wheelchair. Children run, as we've heard, and fall on the hill. They have fun, but it's not barrier-free accessible at all. We're also asked to look at creating areas for photo opportunities, additional art piece placement, and general public engagement. As you heard from Laura, a lot of people now go to the Art Museum grounds with their lunches, people who work in town and eat lunch on the Art Museum property. This will give more opportunity for that to happen. The other goal was to create a level area or an art park. And the idea is to have this art park on the south side of the building, have it feel separate from that large expanse of parking on the south side that's been an unnecessary or been a necessary intrusion to this site. I mean, when the museum was built, they didn't design a parking lot. Very few people had cars. The parking lot had to increase in size so people could get to this museum and visit the museum. And then the other thing they asked us was to look at that circular drive in the front of the property, and does that meet the original intent as we saw from that rendering. The next slide number 8. So slide number 8, in order to start working on a plan, we had to gather historical information, and we found that in 2013, the museum had hired an arborist firm from Brooklyn, New York called Urban Arborists, and they prepared a plan. They prepared a plan that surveyed and studied all of the trees and shrubs on the property, and they also listed what the health of those trees and shrubs were. So by this time, by 2013, according to the Art Museum, the Van Vleck Arboretum was no longer active. The maps and the booklets that I referred to were no longer distributed to people who came to the museum, and I actually had to ask them to find it in their files.
Excuse me, but
Sure.
just to clarify, so there are still trees that were planted as part of that whole plan, but here, this is not indicating which ones were initially part of that.
Correct. This is
Right.
only showing 25 years later, after that plan was developed, what was on the property and what shape those trees and shrubs were in.
Right,
So
and
this-
right, and so in your view, yes, there are remnants of that plan, but the plan is not intact as it was initially envisioned.
Correct. And as I stated, there was the large addition with the loading dock on the east side of the building. Parking lot was expanded. The caretaker's house and the garage was removed. All of the planting from the original plan on the east side of the building is no longer there because there's a building addition there.
Right.
So we reviewed the survey and paid particular attention to that south side of the building and also that circular area to see what the urban arborist plan said. So we went through, reviewed each of the 19 plantings that were within that circular area on the south side, including the one tree in that front area. So it was determined that 9 trees are very healthy. And I met with a landscape contractor with access to a tree spade machine, and we determined that 9 of the healthy trees can be relocated on site elsewhere, away from the south side, but elsewhere onto the property. There's plenty of places to relocate trees with a tree spade machine. Next slide. Okay. Slide number 9, and that indicates a tree plan on the south side of the building. So several trees were determined in that 2013 survey that should be removed or had a few more years before they should be removed. So several trees that should have been removed after the 2013 report are now recommended to be removed. And I highlighted some of those trees. Certain trees were popular, just like other things in life. Certain things go through periods of popularity. In the 1960s and 70s in horticulture, certain things were popular. For example, a calorie pear tree. That was, when I was a student in horticulture classes, a calorie pear in 1970 was the tree. The town of Montclair planted calorie pears up and down Bloomfield Avenue because they have beautiful blooms in the spring, they have nice fall color, nice shape to the tree, but they turned out to be very weak wooded, and after 25 years they start dropping their limbs. So typical of what was popular in the 1960s and 70s, there was a calorie pear tree planted on the museum grounds. There was a white pine tree that was beautiful when it was planted, 1940s and 50s, but it suffers from storm damage and the main leader's broken. The funny thing to me is that there are Japanese yews that look like trees and were identified as trees. Japanese yews are evergreen shrubs. They were planted in the 1940s and 50s next to a concrete bench and a sidewalk because they were a shrub. They were never pruned. They're 20 to 30 feet tall now, growing into each other, so we're recommending that those be removed. There's a threadleaf cypress and an eastern hemlock growing into each other on the south side of this open lawn area next to the museum. The hemlock, as we know, was suffered from a bug, the woolly adelgid, that killed many hemlocks in this area. There's still one on the property. It's leaning against the cypress tree. The cypress tree is basically split in half. Those two should be removed. I mentioned the calorie pear tree, and then the other tree is the Atlas cedar, which is in that front circle in front of the property. This was a beautiful tree. It can be a beautiful tree. When it was planted in 1957, it was meant to be there for many years. It's been there for 62 years, but it's lost a lot of limbs. It's not the shape that it should be. It's completely changed in appearance. It's not the elegant tree that an Atlas cedar could and should be. So we're recommending that be removed. So we're proposing that a total of 9 trees be transplanted on site, 8 trees from this slide number 9 be removed, and the 3 overgrown shrubs, those yews, be removed.
And my apologies if you may not have this answer prepared right in the moment, but you did mention some of these not being endemic to the area, such as the calorie pear, for instance. Of the 9 to be removed, do you know if any of those are actually endemic?
The 9 trees that, okay, well, the Atlas cedar is native of Africa. The eastern hemlock, which suffered from the woolly adelgid, that's an American native, North American native. The threadleaf saguaro cypress is a Japanese tree. There was a Japanese holly that's lost a leader, should be removed, that's Japanese. The white pine was native to northeast United States. Japanese yews are from Japan. So some were native, some were not.
And I'm just trying to reconcile slide 8 and slide 9, given some of the notes, because slide 8 makes it seem like some of them may be in okay condition, but then on slide 9 there's notes indicating, like the Atlas cedar, for instance,
correct,
would appear in the kind of, above 70%
right. So
range, but it's still recommended for removal. So I was just trying to resolve, are there other factors?
Yeah. So slide 8 makes reference to the 2013 Urban Arborist Report. As I said, the cedar in 2013, they said was in fine shape. It said minor defects, stable overall health.
Mm-hmm.
The top right image on slide 8 is the Atlas cedar, and that was a photo taken in the last 2 months to show that the number of limbs that have fallen off of that tree.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Just along those lines, you talked about the yews not being pruned, so they grew into trees, right? I was at the museum today just looking around, and I thought that there are bushes on the side of the front of the museum that seem to be overtaking the walls of the museum, that to me seemed like they were obscuring the the look of the
facade.
facade, yeah, and I
Correct.
was wondering if it's...
So we have no plans to remove those.
Oh, you
Those-
don't?
Those could be pruned. but
Yeah, they
will
seem
not
to be,
removed.
because they're definitely,
Yeah,
you
they're
know,
growing into
swallowing
each
up
other
the
and-
facade, yeah.
Correct.
Mhm.
Thank you.
My other question is, it seems to be the fashion now to have all native plants, and here we are, I know you and I agree,
Right.
we love ginkgo trees, but
favorite tree is a
is
ginkgo.
that, I
Thank
see that's something that you're advocating here as well, for
Well,
just having
it-
native New Jersey plants and trees.
Yeah, there's a movement in horticulture to use more native plant material. As I said, it attracts wildlife, it uses less water, it establishes quickly on the site, doesn't bring invasive insects. Again, if you've heard me for years, my favorite tree is a ginkgo tree, which is native of Asia, but it's not a native, and we've been discouraged from using it.
But this is an arboretum, or it was at one time.
Was,
Aren't we
yes.
supposed to be having specimens from all over the place in a,
Not-
in grounds like this? That
But
just, I know, it's
well, my opinion is
editorial point.
no, it's a good question,
Yeah.
because my opinion is we should preserve whatever is in good shape that's there. Trees don't live forever, so we have to recognize that if something doesn't look right, it should be removed. If it's dangerous, if limbs have been falling. We've talked about at the Historic Commission, Frank who's in the audience, made an appeal to save the cedar tree. It was a beautiful tree, but the museum's worried about the dropping of the limbs, and if they save it for a few more years and build the water feature next to it or around it, then they'll have to spend a lot of money to remove it, in several years from now. Okay. Slide number 10. So slide number 10 is labeled the overall site plan. So this is a colored version of the site plan that you had in your package. And the first point is that everything on this front lawn and wrapping around Bloomfield Avenue will remain as it is now. So none of those plants, those trees that were planned and planted by Howard Van Vleck will be removed. There's a beautiful planting of willow oaks around the corner. Everybody who drives on South Mountain or Bloomfield, you can't help but notice those trees. They're beautiful. The planting along South Mountain that I'm pointing to, those are all to remain. There's the shrubs we just talked about. Some of those were planted by Howard Van Vleck. Some were planted after he finished his plan. Those will all remain. Everything in front of the administration building and surrounding the administration building will remain. So the idea is that there'll be no disturbance along South Mountain Avenue or Bloomfield Avenue, no disturbance to that existing front lawn area. That's important. And as a matter of fact, 76, in our plant schedule, we have 76 new trees that will be planted and 67 new shrubs.
How many new trees was that?
76 new trees are proposed, as well as 67 new shrubs. And the reason you have the revised drawings is that we initially did not have all native plants. And every planning board meeting we've been to in Montclair and surrounding towns, we've been told to use only native plants. So everything that's called for here is a native plant, native to the
Mr.
northeast.
Brodock is not here tonight, so
sorry.
we might get away with it.
So, in addition to the preserving the front lawn area on both streets, in addition to the new planting, one of the goals of the project is to make the exterior of the grounds accessible. And what I mean by accessible is accessible to people who have all different physical abilities. Right now it's not, and I have to repeat that. So we're creating a new level area on the south side of the building, and we're asked to make that feel separate from that parking lot. So the parking lot, as I said, it's a necessary intrusion. It's a 135-car parking lot. You look at the rendering from 1910, there was no parking lot. But this has been necessary. So the idea is to create this level area and try to separate it. So we have a lot of planting between that level area and the parking area directly to the south. We're also proposing a lot of new lighting, but the purpose of the lighting is both for aesthetics and for safety. So first of all, we're showing several new pole light fixtures, which will match the existing pole lights that are on the museum grounds now. So the museum already has these pole lights, except these will have LED fixtures. We're also proposing lights mounted within the steps and also within the wall, so very small LED light fixtures to provide safety on all of the exterior steps and in the sides of some of these new walls. So this area will be surrounded, and we'll hear more from our civil engineer, Paul Anderson, about the grading and drainage, but so that to create the level area, we have walls on two sides of this level area. So again, there's new lighting proposed for safety and also for aesthetics. If we go to slide number 11. Well, slide number 11 is a detailed image of the level plaza area. So the image on the left is an enlargement of the plaza area. And again, the idea is to have large expanses of lawn with interesting shaped walkways. So with the walkways, we look for different choices to use as much permeable material as possible. And the image at the center of that slide is from the New York Botanical Gardens. That's a permeable gravel paving that's held together with epoxy, but people in wheelchairs could actually walk on it and doesn't compress. So this dark brown area on the left is this permeable paving. There are some interesting concrete walkways done strictly for design purposes to have the concrete in the shape of the sweeping curve like that. The sides of the
Are those colored concrete? Is it colored concrete, or are you?
We're not. Well, we didn't pick a color yet for it.
Well, what I'm saying is, I think some of the concern will be the actual finishes here.
Correct.
And
Right.
I think we should get into that a little later,
Yeah.
because that's really, in terms of the site plan, I don't think anybody wants to micromanage, your particular artistic vision for the site plan. Nonetheless, I think the stewardship for the community is to ensure that the quality feel and the image is maintained of what the museum represents, particularly as it ties into the historic designation.
Right.
So that would occur from finishes, and I think we can come back to that later, and I'm probably going to suggest that there be a review of the final finishes as we do with other buildings that are seeking this level of public display. So
Yeah, I agree with that, and the museum board is strongly on board with that, that this be high-quality materials and finishes, and also to be complementary to the existing museum building.
Exactly, because you have some concrete in here, and you have pavers, and as we know,
there are many choices.
Many
yes.
choices, and the selection of that, there's cheap pavers,
Right.
and they're high-quality natural stone, and sometimes there's something in between. So
Right.
let's come back to that.
Okay. So, as I stated before, the goal of this level area was art piece placement, photo opportunities, and general public engagement. And from day one, the history of the museum is that the grounds be considered analogous to the art collections on the inside of the museum. So this would be a place to place artwork, a lot more opportunity to place artwork on the exterior. So rather than that gradual terracing, or rather than that steep slope, and rather than even we originally looked at gradual terracing, the museum asked us to consider large level areas with a water feature that could make this really feel separate from the parking lot next to it. So I'll go to slide 12, if I can. So slide 12 is a south elevation of the existing building. However, this has the level area shown correctly. So this is the large level area cut into the side of the hill. On the left of the level area is this approximately 10 to 12 foot high wall. The level area will be the large lawn area, and it'll be aligned perfectly with that Harris south side entry. And that south side entry is the predominant entry that most people use. When school children come to visit the museum, the buses park on the south. They all enter that Harris entry. Many people park on the south and enter that entry. The beauty of having this retaining wall, working with the existing grade, is to create a water wall on that western side of the level area. So we turn to slide 13. And this is an artist's rendering of the water wall and the level plaza. So the water wall is about 48 feet wide and 10 feet high. and the height is to work with the existing grade and the size of the plaza. There are several purposes of the water wall. Number one, it creates an acoustical buffer and sound blocking. So the sound of running water is a great absorber of sound. Also, it's psychologically pleasing. It has a psychologically pleasing effect. People want to stand there or sit next to the sound, next to running water. Museum is contemplating the possibility of projecting artwork on. Somebody mentioned a film, but the museum hasn't mentioned films. But they're discussed possibly projecting artwork in the winter when the water is not on. And as they stated, the plaza allows for the additional placement of art pieces on the exterior, but finally, for the first time, accessible to people of all physical abilities. We, in order to get to this point, we'll look at slide 14. So slide 14, we worked with a water consultant, and we brought him in to meet with the museum board. A water consultant, Delta Water Consultants from Jacksonville, Florida. They worked on the World Trade Center site, which is the top left image. So he brought myself and several members of the museum board to look at different water features in and around New York City that they worked on, specifically to talk about what the material of the wall should be, how the water should flow off the wall, what it hits on the wall to make different images or different textures. Basically, we found out that almost all water walls are granite. So this water wall will be granite. We're not sure of the texture yet, but granite seems to be the best material for the water wall. So our plan shows for, so this is a western view of the water wall from inside the plaza. So in addition to the water wall, we're calling for a 3-foot 8-inch high stainless steel cable rail, and there's an example of a cable rail that I'm pointing to on just to the rear of the top of the wall, and that cable rail would be tucked into the continuous planting of these native thuya evergreens across the top of the water wall. So the thuya will serve as a backdrop to the water wall, but also separate the driveway, the view from the driveway down to the water wall, separate the view from South Mountain Avenue down into the plaza. The thuya could grow up to 25 feet tall, but they'll form a dense evergreen hedge.
And they would be, so can you note where the wall is within the hedges? You're saying the hedges will grow around the wall?
No.
Or the trees?
Sorry. So I'm pointing to the hedges, the dark green circles are that thuya up on top, and that's set right behind that water wall. But within the front of the thuya is the 3-foot 8-inch high stainless steel cable railing. And we
Right, and the cable railing will be on the street side or the
no,
wall
on
side?
the water wall side. So
okay. Yeah, I was just trying to understand the positioning of that.
right, so this railing will be right set into the front of these thuya.
So is the
as a-
idea that the rail will disappear into the shrubbery?
It'll disappear from the shrubbery, into the shrubbery, but also serve as a protective barrier. And
Right.
this cable rail will come all the way around on top of all of the walls surrounding that level area.
The
For
so the
protection.
cable, it will also extend 90 degrees down the
That's
other
correct, right,
slope.
right.
Okay. Yep.
Related to that, is the same cable wall or cable
Rail.
gonna be on top of the retaining wall on the
On the south side.
On the the
and
east.
also the east side also.
It's
Yes.
called as a guardrail in the site plan, but it's really the
It's a-
cable.
It's a cable rail which serves as a guardrail, yes.
And just while we're on that subject, I don't know if you can answer it, but I think I asked this question before. I need to know what the height is of the retaining wall plus the guardrail.
Okay, we'll have Paul Anderson.
Paul,
will
when
get
you
into
do testify, if you could give me, at that eastern end.
We actually tweaked the plans very, very slightly to add that additional information.
Okay.
So we could run through that.
Okay.
Are there
A very
det-
slight tweak of the plans that you have.
Sorry. Are there details in the plans as to how many cables and how
Well, they have to
far
be-
apart the rail, how apart the vertical supports are going to be, et cetera?
The vertical supports are not shown, but the horizontal distance is dictated by code. They have to be 4 inches on center, maximum.
The
The horizontal.
Every 4 inches?
Yes.
Okay.
And we specifically selected the stainless steel cable rail because it's the least visible. So All right, Nick, sorry.
Were there other trees other than the thuja evergreens considered? Because they seem kind of dull.
We looked at different hollies originally, but it
Hollies?
was determined they would get too big.
But they also have little stickers on them, which might deter
Be a
people from
deterrent,
getting,
correct.
which
Right.
might be a good thing.
Right, we initially looked at that, at hollies. We discussed it at the Development Review Commission. We came to the first, we appeared at 2 historic preservation commissions, and at the first meeting was a woman who was head of the Northern New, I may get the title wrong, but she's head of the Northern New Jersey Native Plant Society, and she suggested we should really, why don't you look at the native thuya, it's a nicer choice. So we did, and it smells nice too.
And did the Van Vleck have any of these in the original garden?
He, I could take a look.
Or anything
yeah.
similar, that you might want to
Very-
consider?
Right, but not native.
Yeah.
So he had a lot of Chamaecyparis or false cypress, which are native to Japan.
Right, but you're sold on having native then?
We're trying to do
Yeah.
all the new plantings native.
Native.
Right, and part of it is that we looked at the Van Vleck plan and the guidebook that went along with the plan, and what's been selected is complementary to that, in that he looked at all year-round interest for all the planting, and that's extremely important. So that's what we've done with the new planting. He looked at the play of the different heights of one plant next to another. We've done that, and also the textures. So that was all important.
But if you're considering this, the external grounds as part of a National Historic Site, wouldn't you want to try to have the new plantings somewhat replicate what was there before? Even if they're not native?
If it was not successful, we would not. So certain
Well, I
things did
understand
not
that,
do
yeah.
well.
Okay.
So next slide, slide number 15. So this is a photo. This is actually from Google Earth. Had a better photo than we could take. So this is a view of the front circular drive as it looks today. And the questions we were asked was, does the current circular drive still bring that opening night elegance? I showed you the rendering from 1910, the men in their top hats going to the museum, and the women in their dresses. So does this still look like that? Does it still have that elegance? So we were asked, what should we do about this? Second is that the Atlas cedar tree that was planted in 1957, it's not the beautiful tree it once was. It lost a lot of limbs. Next is asphalt paving, the correct material for the front of the museum. And then, what about barrier-free access? Currently, people in a wheelchair can't get from the South Mountain Avenue sidewalk to the museum westerly entrance. It's too steep on that northern side. So we were asked to address all of those items. So slide number 16. So first of all, we called for replacing all of the asphalt in the front circle with paver material that would look like cobblestone or granite block. We haven't selected the color yet, but the intent is to have that look more elegant. And the first thing is to get rid of that asphalt paving. The asphalt's cracked, it's not attractive. It works well for years, but if we could do something nicer, we're proposing to put the pavers that look like granite block or cobblestones. Second is the cedar tree that's within the circle that's proposed to be removed. We've heard that the museum's seeking to relocate the sunvow sculpture that's within that circular area. We're proposing to install a pedestrian sidewalk along the south side of that circular drive. By putting it on that south side, it's less than a 8.3% slope, or less than a 1 in 12 slope, so we don't need railings, so it complies with barrier-free requirements. So we saw on old drawings, the museum records, that there had been a walkway on that side, and it's not there anymore. But if we install a new walkway on that south side and do something interesting with a crosswalk, changing the pattern of the pavers at the crosswalk, there'll be a complete barrier-free access for people walking from South Mountain Avenue to this westerly entrance on South Mountain Avenue. And then, most importantly, we're proposing the circular water feature. So, again, we looked at different water features. all around New York and New Jersey. This was from Madison Square Park in New York City. The New York Botanical Gardens has a beautiful water feature similar to what's being proposed at the Montclair Art Museum. So this would be a 40-foot diameter, granite-clad, granite-walled water feature, and the water would be about 12 inches deep. And the idea is that it would be reminiscent of the rendering from 1910 to 1913. We're not copying it exactly, but it would be reminiscent of that. And then the last slide, slide 17.
Before you get into that, isn't, on the Madison Square Park feature, isn't the secondary stone that you kind of cut off at the bottom there, isn't that a natural stone, though?
At the bottom, underneath that top rail?
Yes. Isn't that a bluestone or something equivalent past the bordering framing?
I'm not sure. It might be under this top surface, but the interior is all granite, and our reflecting pond will be all granite.
Right. So what I'm addressing is the secondary surround,
Right.
which certainly pavers are better than the macadam. But are you considering natural stone in these places? Or?
Oh, this is maybe this will answer. This is all lawn. So this is a 66-foot diameter circle. The existing circle is 66 feet in diameter. The proposed water feature is 40 feet in diameter. So it's to be surrounded with a lawn area.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about the driveway. It's
right. So the driveway is the
okay, that's where you're proposing a
cobblestone granite block.
Got it. So it's a granite-clad material, a natural, effectively a veneered natural stone
for the
surrounding the water feature.
Correct.
As the edge
and the top surface and the inside of it too.
Then the lawn, right? Okay. Yeah. Right. Well, that's better.
Sure.
I have a question. Isn't where the water feature going to be, isn't that kind of on a little hill?
Right. This would
Are
be
you
regraded.
flattening it out?
We're regrading it in order to have a sitting wall around
You
the
are?
perimeter.
Okay,
of
so
that
you're
water
going
wall.
to
Right.
flatten it out?
Yeah.
Okay, because
So
you can't, if it was kept as a hill, you can't see it.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Okay.
the idea is to make this more welcoming. We're talking about people sitting on the edge. So this last slide, slide number 17, basically the museum looked at a lot of choices for what to do within this circular area. We went back and forth with amphitheaters, different features, but we kept coming back to the water feature, and it seemed to be the right thing, especially with art as a central focus within the water feature. And we deemed that the art piece within the water feature was important, especially in winter. So if water is drained, the 12 inches of water is drained in the winter, it's important to have something within the water feature and also to have a good base material within the circle. So we learned that granite was the best material to have as the flat surface within the circle.
How come you didn't put men with top hats and women with dresses in this rendering? What's with that?
They weren't wearing them when the rendering was done.
Okay, thank you.
You didn't put lawyers in the picture.
Is that it? That concludes our direct testimony with this witness, Mr. Chair.
Any more questions from the board? We've been asking questions here and there.
There was just one on the safety of the wall.
Okay.
You can see that the engineer has to do a gap between the fence and the wall.
Yes.
Should I ask you or ask?
You could ask the engineer. But the gap between the fence and the wall.
Yeah.
All right. But I'll answer what I can answer with my direct knowledge, and at the top of the.
Well, if the wall slopes down to meet, where the walkway is in the middle.
Yes.
The fence is going to be behind the wall.
No, I'm sorry. So the fence will be on top of the wall on the sides and also on the east side. The fence will only be behind the wall on the water wall.
Okay, that's it, because it'll always be behind the wall, right?
Correct, right, like a ladder.
Just a quick question on the permeable surfaces. So can you traverse those in a wheelchair
Yes.
or with a stroller?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's why they were selected.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Great.
So the grassy area around the water, the circular water area, it looks like there are brick pavers, not pavers of some variety, curbing around that portion. That's not going to be accessible by people in wheelchairs, I guess.
That will not be. Right.
Other questions from the board? Questions from the public of Mr. Sionas concerning his testimony?
Kathleen Bennett. Hi. I have a question. The Arboretum, as it was, that is a designated Arboretum, correct? I mean, that's...
It was, according to the museum records, the museum committee that helped Mr. Van Vleck with the planting decided to establish this as the Van Vleck Arboretum. Yes.
So there was no Arboretum when the museum was inaugurated in 1914? It just began in 1950?
No, the Arboretum was established, I believe, around 1988.
1988, okay.
Correct.
So now, ongoing, is the Arboretum now the designation or the publicity? Is that, will the museum still publicize that their grounds are an Arboretum, or is that dying as well?
As I stated before, when I read that there was an Arboretum, I asked if there was materials, and the museum had to find the map and the booklet for me, since they said I believe it was as of the 2,000 large additions to the building, the loading dock and the parking lot, the Arboretum was not active anymore. So in other words, the maps were not handed out, the booklet was not handed out, and the plantings to the east of the building were gone.
Okay, so there will be no more Arboretum designated at the Art Museum?
Not that I know of.
And I have another question. You testified that now a wheelchair can't get from South Mountain down to the south entrance, correct?
I testified that currently a wheelchair cannot get from the South Mountain public sidewalk to the westerly entrance of the building.
To the main entrance?
Correct, yes.
So you're not talking about the grade down to the...
So what I was...
From South Mountain to the main building?
Correct. So currently this sidewalk, which is existing on the north side of that circular drive, is too steep for a wheelchair. So I think we worked with Joseph Hewitt. We worked it out that this could become the handicapped access to that westerly entrance, which there is done now.
Oh, okay. I was confused. I thought you were speaking about South Mountain down to the south entrance, the new entrance.
No, we were talking about getting to that westerly entrance.
Okay, that's how I couldn't understand where the grade change was. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a question, would you consider having some, I don't know, spoke or whatever that would go to the circular water feature that would be wheelchair accessible?
Well, we would consider that, yes.
I mean, that seems to be one of the themes of this, is trying to make it more. That would lead you in to sit in that circular area by the around water feature. Okay.
So Adrienne O'Toole, so the water features are not running in the wintertime, they're turned off, say from November to March?
As far as we understand from
It
the
would be a blank wall and an empty fountain?
The water feature in the front would probably be drained based on the recommendations of the consultant.
Well, it makes sense. And what about the waterfall? Unless you have to put, chlorine, what do you keep in things to keep them moving?
Yeah, we did not discuss what they would do with that.
I was just asking how these features would be unfeatured in the wintertime.
Okay.
Frank Godlewski. Hi, Paul. How are you?
Frank.
Paul, would you please clarify or repeat what you said that you consider the Arboretum as part of the museum's collection? I was confused.
No, I did not say that.
No? What did you say that was on the exterior in the garden that was part of the collection?
I stated that looking at the museum records, it said that the artwork on the exterior was analogous to the museum's art collections on the interior.
I see. But the landscape you don't consider part of the collection, or the Arboretum, the Van Vleck Arboretum?
Not part of the collection. Correct.
Thank you.
Further questions from the public? Counselor, next witness.
Call our next witness, Paul Anderson. Okay, we're going to mark Exhibit 815, which is something very, very close to what you've seen before. Today's date is, what is it?
What's on the board? It's a grading and drainage exhibit. Today's date is a colorized version of what's in the plans with some enhancements so you can see the spot elevations and the height of the wall better.
Is that SP2?
That is correct.
It's SP2, very, very similar to what you have in your packages, of course, rendered with some minor changes, as I have mentioned, really simply to respond to comments by your engineer and to be ready to answer any questions about those elevations.
So, Paul, before you even get going, swear him first.
Yes.
Swear him in first. Sir, do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Would you please state your full name and business affiliation for the record?
Paul W. Anderson. I'm the principal at Anderson Consulting Services.
We'll let him testify before we start swearing at him. Just wait. Everybody will have a chance. Okay. Mr. Anderson, can you provide your professional qualifications in the fields of civil engineering and professional planning for the board, please?
Yes. I'm a professional engineer in the state of New Jersey with a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from Clarkson University, 1983. And I became licensed in 1988. Been practicing since then, since I graduated as a civil engineer. I took and passed the planning exam approximately a dozen years ago and became a professional planner.
And have you been recognized by other planning and zoning boards around the state in the fields of civil engineering and professional planning?
Yes, I have. And I have testified before this board previously and been accepted as an expert witness in those fields.
Chairman, I'll submit Mr. Anderson as an expert in the appropriate fields that I've mentioned.
We'll accept him.
We appreciate
Thank you,
that.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Anderson, the board has had a lot of information, obviously, but there are a few remaining engineering issues. Can you touch on the highlights and also be reflective of the questions that were asked and the board engineer's report as well?
Yes, I'll try to take them one at a time and you'll remind me.
Fair enough.
All right, so my task was to do a grading and drainage plan for this as well as a sediment control plan. So my task was to create level areas that met the ADA code so people could access the building from both the first level on the South Mountain side and also the, what we're calling the south side of the property, or the south entrance here. So we have grades at the accessible parking stalls that are in the south parking lot and grades the finished floor of the building. I have one. Thank you. And so we set grades so that that walkway was an accessible walkway. From that, we radiated out and created elevations along the base of the wall with approximately a 2% pitch all the way up there, so it's an accessible area in its entirety, similar to the going to the east to the lower area. And that established a wall height at the bottom of the wall of, I believe, 361.1. Now, similar to that, on the upper side of the wall, there's 5 accessible parking spaces that we have that have to gain access to the front of the building through the main entrance. And so we have an elevation in there. It pitches as you go from the circle back to the site, through to the parking lot, but it's in the range of 372 to 373. When you do the math, that comes up to a wall height of 12.2 feet of concrete covered with granite, as Paul has indicated. And behind that wall, we have the fence, God bless you, that is 3 feet 8 inches high. So you add those all together, and the maximum total height of the wall and the fence is 15.6 feet high. Now, your ordinance, which is, if I can find it here, Section 347-27.1 for retaining walls indicates that 7 feet is the maximum height permitted in the zone. But in order for us to make this an accessible space, we need the additional height. Now, let me do the drainage elements first before I go on to the planning elements. Sure, absolutely.
What's TF on the plan?
Top of fence.
How the fence and the top of the wall are the same number? So
Shouldn't be.
375.3 goes 2 feet high.
Well, on the upper wall, I put the fence behind the wall, so it's
So
on.
the wall, the top of the wall is 2 feet above the grade and back of the wall?
It varies. So when we come down to the walkway that goes through the center of the plaza, we have a 3-foot ending height of that retaining wall.
The top of the wall is 373.3, the top of the fence is 375.3. So that's 2 feet over the top of the wall. The one on the upper left-hand corner, I'm just trying to figure out.
That's because.
The wall goes above the grade in the back?
Exactly.
Okay, so there's a little grade.
There's a little bit of a reveal in the back of the
Right,
wall.
so where they face the parking spaces, that's 4 feet back, or whatever. The fence is 4 feet back from the top of the wall. So a landscaper's got to get up there.
The fence is directly behind the back of the wall.
Oh, so how far from the back of the wall? Literally, it touches the back of the wall?
Yes.
Oh, okay, so it's in back of the trees?
Correct.
From the parking space?
Correct.
Correct.
Correct. So you have to go through the trees, and then there's a fence there that you really can't see.
I don't agree with this provision.
Okay.
You need another variance.
Could you speak into the mic, please?
It says that you have to put these fences back 4 feet, or I'm sorry, 1 foot for every height of the fence.
That's
in E.
so that you don't count the height of the fence itself in the variance application.
Oh, is that
So
why? I thought you just had
if
to.
you
I
have a
didn't realize
10-foot
that.
high wall and a 4-foot high fence on top of it, then you
Okay.
have 14 feet. If you place it back, the fence back 4 feet behind it, then it's still a 10-foot wall.
Okay,
So that's your intention.
Okay, it just says,
Tony,
it says that
You
you.
can see the fence on 17. You can see.
Yeah, I know, I'm just saying, what it says in the code is that, it says that when the overall height of the retaining wall or when the overall height of the retaining wall and guardrail, fence or wall exceeds the maximum height, the guardrail, fence, wall, or other must be set back from the top of the retaining wall 1 foot for every foot of the height of the guardrail.
Can you just give us the section so we can follow along?
347-27.1E. The section he was referring to, E.
Yeah.
I'm just saying you might need another variance just to make it ironclad.
We'll take it.
Because it doesn't say you add it to the height, it says you have to do it, and you're less than the height of the, all right, so that's that. And then on the other side, so no kid can get in there and climb up the wall. So the kid, because it's really, the top of the wall is really low, and it's almost touches the ground. So a little kid, my kids will do this,
Not now, but I could see him, just inching up that wall because you can, even if it's narrow, you can step on it. So just be sure that you can prevent that from happening.
Glass.
Because I could see these kids, parents are looking this way and the kids are walking up the wall.
Yeah.
Right. That's all I have on it.
Okay.
Because I think the fence sort of has to be literally on top of the wall and not behind it, so you don't create a shelf where you can amble up.
Visually, too, it strikes me.
I don't know.
It strikes me as better as fence on top of it visually.
Yes, we have it on top of the wall on the eastern wall. So we have it both ways. I think it's more of a construction detail in terms of the variance that we have this evening. I think the height, the maximum height is still 15.6 feet, because you have to include the fence and the wall. And we're not going to offset it 4 feet.
So I think you need two variances. I think you need a variance for the height of the wall, and a variance that says you have to set the fence back the height of the fence, according to.
Okay, I mean, I didn't read it that way, but if that's the case, then you're a variance for the height of the
Arthur
wall
will tell you.
at 12.2.
He knows.
So.
Who? You talking
Arthur.
about Arthur?
No, I think it's talking about us.
Yeah. I think to be safe, just request the variance.
Okay.
That's simple.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Forgive me, I'm a little confused by this testimony. As I understand it, the wall that we're talking about, this 15-plus foot wall that is on the western side of on the western side here.
yes.
Are there elements of the wall that are coming down
Both-
perpendicular?
Correct.
And I think what I was getting from Tony's statements is that this fence, the metallic fence,
Yes.
that's going to come down both sides of it as well, correct?
That was not showing. Didn't seem to be showing.
Yeah, that's why I'm a
It's
little...
coming down the one side on the outside. I
Which-
believe we
which
don't
one
have it
side?
on-
You have to be, Paul,
we
you
don't
have to be
it
a
on the
little more
stairs.
precise than that.
The one by the parking lot.
Parking lot side.
Yes.
So it's coming, that metallic fence is coming down the parking lot side. And what I was getting from what Tony was saying is that is it possible for a kid to walk up this?
Slope of the wall.
Correct.
From the plaza side.
Yes.
Correct.
That's what I'm understand, that's what I was
Well, that's the other
understanding.
thing. The
about.
other, this minor thing about the variance, you just, I just,
It's the
you
same.
need the variance. You
Yeah,
need to
it's
set
a
the fence
safety
back.
issue.
Well, there's a fence along the stairs. The railing goes along the stairs.
There's actually, I believe, the architectural plan calls for 3-foot height of the wall next to the stairs.
Right, and
That's
the wall will be terraced along the stairs, so you're not going to have that same issue. Going up the stairs, it's going to be terraced, so actually no variances are needed for the height of the wall along the stairs because of the terracing, and then the railing is actually along the stairs.
I'm talking about well, that's okay. Sometimes you just stop.
No, I think
No,
you're talking
it-
about safety issue,
Well, no,
aren't you?
I'm talking about two
Right,
things.
it's not just a variance.
interpretation of
Yeah.
the
You have
code.
like you have the guardrail, the cable thing, right? The cable thing is parallel to the handicap spaces, right? And the wall's really big. It's 15 feet or whatever.
Right.
The code says that fence, the railing, has to be set back from the top of the wall by its height. So if you have a 3.5-foot fence, it has to be set back 3.5 feet according to E. So you need a variance for that.
F, I think you mean.
E. F, sorry, yeah, F. And then, that's not a safety issue, that's just a minor variance that you need. Because otherwise, you have to set it back, and that creates the safety hazard. The safety hazard, what Arthur just repeated, was that no matter what you do with this fence, even if it's behind the wall's going to have a cap. And the cap is going to be really close to the ground on your major sidewalk that goes through, and that's where the kid can kind of walk up. So you have to figure out how to, unless you put these guy wires or whatever right in the middle of the fence.
And there's not.
Or, I'm sorry, in the middle of the wall, right at.
And there's
right-
not a lot of wall on either side of the fence
yeah.
posts, right?
But you need to think about it.
But that's not, we don't know how to do it, we just kind of, point it out.
it's a little band like the birds, nobody can skateboard down and walk up the thing, you know.
But the railing from the terrace steps
Yes.
needs to connect with
It will.
that, so that will connect all the way up.
Yes.
It connects on all sides.
Okay, so I just wasn't understanding where someone's going to walk. I don't see how you get access to the top of the wall. I get the point about the other variants.
Well,
The fear is walking.
I can go up there and show you, or...
Oh, that side of it.
Yeah, they're gonna walk up the
Ah,
side of the
yeah, okay.
stairs. You're gonna walk up the angled wall.
Yeah, I've done that. I've done that before.
When you're 8 years old, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. You need to put one of those little metal bands that prevent, skateboarders, walkers, so that.
Hold on.
You see what I mean?
I'm not recording. Wait a minute.
You guys are going to have
That's
to
good.
say that all over again.
Okay.
It's
Wait a
slide first.
minute. I gotta figure out how to switch this to another.
Okay.
I don't want to speak forward.
You know the kids are gonna go up this. They're 100% gonna walk.
It's very tempting. It's very tempting.
And someone's gonna fall and crack their head. It's
very tempting.
And there'll be a lawsuit.
All the children are like this.
There'll be a lawsuit then. We used to have this goes on to
Yeah, and then they'll start.
And on top of the wall, they had the rocks, set in the concrete. So we used to walk on top of the rocks. Rocks were put there to keep people from walking on.
Right. To make it uneven, to make it right, yeah. No problem.
Just walk on top of the rocks.
They will climb everything.
They will, of course they will.
Felipe G.
Chairman, do we want to take a quick break? Well,
Yeah.
you got it?
Okay.
Don't pull my plug.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay.
Okay.
Have we
Done with the,
resolved that?
I don't know if we're still on the fence height. Does anybody have any questions on that?
Oh,
before-
has that been resolved? That's my question. To,
I, for one, am not clear on what the fence is exactly going to look like. What the fence and the wall and the relationship at the bottom
We're gonna
is
ask-
exactly going to look like. And I'm not sure whether a verbal description, is something that's going to work. I think it might help if we just saw an illustration of how the wall relates to the fence at the bottom. I agree, it's a safety issue. Walls are kid magnets, and always have been, and probably always will be. And so there's just some way that the fence and the wall need to be configured. It's, in order to make it safe. So we just want to make sure that is.
The fence is on the center of the top of the wall on the south side.
Oh, it is?
Show the picture that has the trees and the fence sort of built into it.
slide 13, isn't it?
Thank
Yeah.
you, Counselor.
Yeah, I think it's,
Go back one, Paul.
I don't see the fence.
I don't see fence. That's-
So,
Okay.
Yeah, it's not shown clearly.
As I was saying.
Yes, as you, but the fence is shown on the site plan on the center of the top of the wall, the south wall, and on the west wall, it's directly behind that wall.
So, and I think it's the west wall is the one that's at the top, is at the very top.
Correct.
So that we understand. But it's on top of the wall, so
south.
at the bottom of the wall where it comes down to the walkway,
On the south side?
on the south side,
Yes.
where it comes down to the walkway, how high is the wall?
Comes down to 0,
Well,
right?
we have, the detail shows 3 feet high, but it's not, there's no reveal on either, there's reveal on both sides.
But it's higher on the inside. It's the variance, I think,
Yeah.
it's over 7 feet tall.
Or-
At the fence.
Correct.
So that's why the variance is not just along the western end,
Right.
It actually comes down the retaining wall. You have to include the fence.
So at the bottom, there is a wall, and then there's a fence in the middle of the wall.
So what I think would be very helpful, to clearly identify where the variance is identify on the plan where the combined height of the fence and the wall starts at above 7 feet on the plans. So we know exactly where the variance is. And in addition, details on the sidewalls where the fence is in relation to the wall, and details on where the back wall where the fence is in relation to the wall. Maybe that would answer all your questions.
Yeah, because I just have I'm just trying to figure out what it looks like.
Right.
And what the possibilities are to play with it in terms of the kids playing with it, you know? if
Yeah,
it's-
so SP2 with a blow-up right, like right where that
Yeah.
wall is would be great, because this is a really good plan. And to the extent that you've got the bottom of the wall, top of the wall, and top of a fence called out, those elevations are really good, really good information. But, like right now it says, at where the wall is the lowest point by the walkway, it says the top of the wall is 364.1, but the top of the fence is 364.7.
And that's confusing.
Which means that the wall is only
Yes.
0.6
So-
feet high, or the fence is 0.6 feet over the wall, which presumes that it's in back of the wall, not on top of the wall. So
So-
there's some inaccuracy in this plan.
It's a different design, not an inaccuracy, but after hearing your comments and understanding what you're getting at, let me explain where we should go. I still believe the fence should be immediately behind the upper retaining wall on the west, and then it could run down the middle of the top of the concrete wall. It'll look like the fence that's shown over here in Exhibit 14, second from the right. And
So in that case,
so
the
that will
top of the
change
fence will be 3.5 feet above the top of the wall.
Right, so
All right.
So
when you do these plans, I don't mean to, I know I'm interrupting, but we heard that the top of the fence is the top of the wall. For this purpose, make the top of the wall the top of the wall, so we know what the top of the wall is. Make the top of the fence the top of the fence for this, so we understand.
Well,
Don't count the fence in the height of the wall, just for zoning purposes, because then we can't.
But that's what your ordinance requires.
Yeah, that's.
But I mean, but for
so
visual
that's- I
purposes,
actually-
it's helpful to know how high
I
the
s-
fence is relative. to
Right,
the
and that
wall.
makes this not make sense. It makes the measurements on this not make sense to us. And when I say to us as non-engineers, we're looking at this, we're thinking top of fence, top of wall, and, it makes it confusing.
Well, it certainly, give me a moment to go through this so that it's less confusing. All right, so I think we're in agreement with your suggestion that we'll put it on the wall, on the sides.
Well, Paul, you're saying it's already on the wall.
Correct.
You see my confusion
Yes,
here?
I absolutely do,
Okay,
Mr.
so
Chairman.
we can, if you can come back and clarify the whole thing for us and give us an accurate depiction.
I can clarify it right now.
No, if you could come back and give us an accurate depiction of what it will look like so that we can see it, because between the two of you, we're confused. All right?
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
No. If you're going to argue with me and tell me, no, you don't want to do that, then no. Do you have an objection to what I've asked?
No objection. I was just going to try to say, why don't we take an account of where we are at the end of the night and see what the open issues are and address it at that point?
Well, I think, fine. This is going to be one of the open issues. And I was proposing that we move on from this. We have about 15 minutes left. We're going to break testimony here at 10 o'clock because we have another matter that we've got to start. So, we've got 15 minutes left. I'd like to try and get as much of this witness testimony in as possible.
May I just ask 2 or 3 brief questions
Sure.
on the wall? Somewhat pointed. First, the fence on the wall would remain at the 3'8" height, or would it reduce to a lower height at some point in your proposal?
It would stay the same height throughout.
Okay. And your concern regarding on top of the block of the wall or behind the wall is more of a structural concern for the wall itself? Or is it
It was a concern for the wall height. We're 15.6 feet, and I was trying to reduce it a little bit. It still provides the protection on the upper area, which was where my head went in terms of somebody walking through that level area from those handicap spaces, peeking through the trees and falling.
Okay.
So
And then-
if, as long as it's there, then that protects that upper section of the
And then lastly, just some direction
Yeah.
towards the cross-section or cut we're all going to be looking for later.
Mhm.
The spot elevations along the wall, the
Yep.
key locations, the wall, physical wall itself, as it hits 4 feet and then exceeds that, so a point at the 4.0 of the height of the wall, a point at the 7.0 of the wall plus fence, and any other key changes in heights relative throughout.
As spot grades on the
Right,
plan.
and then the duration of the fence, critical to where it's laid out in this proposal currently, it's laid out the entirety of the wall, but my biggest concerns would be in those locations where fall protection is required.
Sir, can I ask, we're definitely going to have conversations, the chairman wants more detailed plans, but what I would like to do, if it's okay, is suggest you guys confer after, we'll address all your issues, but I want to get to the remaining issues to
understand.
see if there are any significant concerns.
I understand.
We've been on the wall for a half an hour.
I understand,
so
just
I wanna-
respectfully, I just wanted to give the benefit of my board and my chairman some of the pointed technical comments that would be necessary for those changes.
We're
that
going
we
to
bring
consult with you, absolutely, and
on the record. That was the point of my 3 questions, was on the record, for the benefit of the record and my board. Thank you.
All right, so what else do you have for us?
So we have storm drainage for this project. If we can get back to the exhibit here. Where did that-
Paul Sionas, can you give us the rendered site plan?
So the drainage in the circle was probably original or very nearly, and it's undersized. So we designed a collection system in the front that comes around, connects to the system that's in the parking lot in the south. Because of the size of the existing system, we decided to put a dry well over the existing pipe to allow for some infiltration, allow the water to gradually get into the existing drain, and actually create more recharge into the site. We did similar for drainage in the plaza itself. We have a low spot that's outside the southern entrance door, and an inlet there, and then an inlet at the second wall down that connects to a dry well that we have, again, in the parking lot over top of the existing drainage system. This area is somewhat contained in terms of the rest of the site. The drainage from this area is basically going the same place it's going today. We're not changing the direction of the drainage, or there should be no impacts of drainage on anyone else. There should be nothing new created by this. That's a problem. In fact, it should operate much more efficiently than the existing. Want to get into the
Anything
planning, or
else?
you want-
There was a mention in the review letter, soil conservation district.
Yep. It's, yes, it's certainly required, and we will have to make that application, get that approval, go forward. Also mentioned in the engineer's report that the walls would have to be detailed, have a detailed design, and we'd be glad to do that. And also do a completion, post-construction completion report.
Okay, and in our remaining time, can we address the statutory criteria for the variance we've identified, and as
Yep.
amended, if there's a need for an additional variance for the step back, the 1-foot step back?
Hey, can I ask you a question about the drainage?
Absolutely.
Do you think that you could go a little further? If you just did the measurement on exactly what's disturbed, can you do a little more? It's a big parking lot that is, I would imagine that it drains to the Montclair storm sewer, right, where sheet flow off into the street. So,
yes.
I would love, and Keith is not here, he's definitely back here. If you could, maybe when you go back, think about mitigating some of that flow that's in that existing lot, that would be awesome. As long as you're doing some of the structures, pick up a little bit more, go a little bit further than just the absolute minimum of looking at just you took the next flow of what's disturbed. this as well?
We did. We have taken care of the existing parking lot in the area that we have disturbed. I'll have to talk to to my client to see whether they want to extend it. Yeah.
You know, there's some green infrastructure, it could be not very expensive at all. They actually could be features, so you could maybe drive some of the water into areas up against the curbs, keep it there, have it infiltrate. A little bit of green infrastructure might be interesting to look at as well. So you've got that big sheet flow under there.
We do.
We'll take a look at that. Of course, there is a budget. We appreciate that.
Tax-free property, though, right? Montclair's keeping.
Well, this is,
Let me look at the,
adds a lot to the community, for sure.
Paul, were you part of the design team of the expansion of the building previously?
I was not.
Okay. I was just going to ask you if you could comment on whether it was a major development at that time, in which case that stormwater design would have addressed many of these concerns.
Yeah, I'm not familiar.
Okay.
I did not do that project.
Okay.
Can you talk on the statutory criteria?
Just to follow up with that,
I think what is being danced around is things like rain gardens, rechanneling of the water into potential other areas. Both our engineer and our vice chair have some expertise in that area, and without any additional monies, just with potentially a design solution, you may be able to utilize some of that water. Tony as well. The town had a relationship with Rutgers where a lot of these new techniques are being used, permeable surfaces, semi-permeable surfaces. So I think a conversation at least might be productive to come up with potentially some other solutions to both mitigate the water without any additional cost. So
Maybe you can catch it to feed the water features.
Exactly.
You can use that water.
yeah, use the storm water for the water features. So as I said, our engineer and our vice chair and our resident engineer there have some experience in that area, and certainly a conversation would help in that regard.
Okay.
Planning. New hat.
New hat. So let me address the negative criteria first. We have a C1 variance.
C1?
Or C2 variance, I'm sorry. We have retaining walls with basically fairly limited visibility from the neighboring properties. Obviously, from Bloomfield Avenue, you're not seeing it. From South Mountain Avenue, you do not see this height of this retaining wall because it's depressed lower than, it comes to that point and drops. So you don't see a bulky retaining wall from that point. You do not see it largely from the south, in that this wall it drops from that southern wall. So the mass and height of that wall is mitigated from those three directions. From St. Luke's Place, the height of that wall, it's over 300 feet away. There's some limited visibility in this view shed right here from where it comes from Place up there, but you're really not going to see it from other locations. So there's very limited visibility of the retaining wall from anywhere outside the property. It is an interior retaining wall. It's not a property line retaining wall where if you're driving by it, you lose light, air, and open space by driving by it. Also, the retaining wall is an architectural feature. It has the water wall. It has a granite covering. It's actually going to be a very attractive feature of the site, and it'll enhance the building and the site itself. So it doesn't have the standard retaining wall appearance of a large, bulky concrete structure. The 3-foot 8-inch fence on top is of limited visibility. So even though we require the variance for the full height that I will tell you next time in great detail, that top 3-foot 8 inches is not that visible. Additionally, the wall is going to be buffered with a lot of plantings, and it's going to be buffered in that regard on the inside also. So based on this, the detriments that from this wall, from this variance for a wall height, is minimal. There's really not that much of a negative impact from this.
Any impact on the master plan at all?
Well, I'll get to that. On the positive criteria, the art museum is an inherently beneficial use that wants to expand to allow an outdoor space that's accessible for everybody in the community. It certainly, it's going to be a wonderful addition to the community to have this extra space, to have additional exhibits, and to have it used by everybody. It also addresses a couple things in the Montclair master plan. If you look at the master plan as a vision statement, it says Montclair has become a town known for quality, accessibility, and diversity of its parks, plazas, streets, trail networks, and public facilities, as well as for its environmental stewardship. It has a second statement that says Montclair Center continues to be the premier mixed-use community center, a commercial center with an arts and an entertainment district at its core that attracts both local residents and visitors throughout the region. Is a vibrant, safe, clean, and wonderful place to live. I think that this project addresses the master plan vision by providing a high-quality, accessible art exhibit space, further enhancing the art district in town for everybody. Also, it addresses one of the master plan goals, which is it says to enrich the quality of life and strengthen economic viability by establishing Montclair as a regional center for the arts, with particular focus on creating an arts and entertainment district. It meets this goal also by growing this, which is probably one of the core principles of the arts community in Montclair. And so I think it meets that master plan goal. In terms of the purposes of zoning, I think that the general welfare is advanced by adding this outdoor exhibit space and making it barrier-free. I also think that when it's all completed and you're there, you'll see that it's a desirable visual environment meeting purpose of planning I. So based on the C2 criteria, I think the variance for the wall height can be granted as the benefits clearly outweigh the detriments, and the granting of the variance will not have any substantial detriment on the zone plan or the ordinance.
And any relevance to the master plan here? Other than the positives that you said, you see any negatives to
I
that?
see no negatives to the master plan by permitting this, considering it's nowhere in view.
Okay, Chairman, that concludes our testimony with this witness.
I have one more point, if I may. Since we're talking about this engineering, I don't know if you know, but your insurance company would take a look at these plans and look at them from a safety point of view, especially given that you intend to have a lot of children, as you were saying. So they do this free. You're paying a lot for your property insurance. Give them your plans, and they'll give you some comments if you want.
Okay, thank you.
All right, well, it's 10 o'clock, and there's some things that we need to clear up in connection with this testimony. We are not going to continue further with any questioning from the board or from the public, but we'll pick this up at the top of the next hearing. The date, Janice?
September 23rd. Okay. That's our next date.
All right. And Counselor, you want to?
What day of the week is that, a Monday night?
It's a Monday night.
Always a Monday night.
Oh, yes. Be flying in, arriving at 2 a.m., but I'll be here. Happily. Okay, we'll have no further notice, Chairman. Can I confirm that?
No further notice?
Can we let the residents know that there won't be any more notice on this?
There won't be any further notice given for the hearing. Are you and your witnesses straight on what things we need clarified?
I think we are. We're going to take a look at some of the stormwater, and really the fencing and the insurance company. I think that was it. I don't think there's... That's the fencing. That's the detail on the fencing. If there's anything else, please let me know so that we can try to clean it all up in between.
Are we good? Everything on the report's been addressed?
Yeah, everything in my report has been
I
touched.
think that's easily a condition
I
of
would just
approval.
offer that I'll be available to Mr. Anderson and Mr. Sionas, at their convenience for any discussions on these revisions.
Okay.
To
And,
bring forward the clarity of the board's comments.
and do you have an intention of telling us where you're going to put the Sunval statue?
I think you heard from our witness that a final decision hasn't been made yet.
Well, we're not seeing you for another month or so, so will it be made by then? No?
Do you want to address that, Laura?
The board is just back from meeting.
Lori, I need you to speak in the microphone. Thank you.
Board is just back officially right before the September 23rd meeting. I don't expect that we're going to have the full design of the grounds done at that point, so I think it will still be to be determined.
Thank you.
I mean, in terms of the placement of sculpture.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. We
Okay.
appreciate the 2.5-hour block. I know hearing time's hard to come by here.
All right, thank you, guys. See you next time. Do we
I
need a
got
break?
it.
Or can we,
Yeah, I'm good.
Keep going.
it should
No,
be
I
short?
have-
Can-
Yeah, I don't need it.
All right,
It's different than that one? It's different than the handout?
Mr. Chairman, before we break, I'm recusing myself. We're not?
we're not going to break, but we're going to go into the next.
All right.
We're going to go into the
Give it to me and I'll.
next hearing on our agenda is Andrew Moldovan, 1517 Hawthorne Place. Hopefully I didn't butcher your name.
Mr. Chairman and Board Secretary, I'm recusing myself from this application officially because of a conflict.
Okay. Take a seat. I don't know.
You want this? Let me know if you dig one up, because I'll need that for my resolution.
I have to look.
Yeah, but that doesn't have a cover sheet. That's what I'm supposed to. It's like, what happened here?
What? Okay, we do. Yeah. Okay, thank you. No, I think he's going to be bumped.
Folks in the back, folks in the back.
Yeah.
Okay, Sir, tell us what you hear about.
Sure. So before you do that, may I ask you to raise your right hand? Sir, do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
And would you please state your name and address for the record, please?
My name is Andrew Moldovan. The house in question is 1517 Hawthorne Place.
And before you begin, do you want to mark?
Oh, yes, just for the record, I've marked exhibits here. A1 is the application, A2 is the certification of taxes paid, A3 is the proof of publication, A4 is the affidavit of service, A5 is a minor site plan prepared by GMH Architecture, dated December 12th, 2018, and revised August 1st, 2019. A6 is the report from Suburban Consultant Engineers dated June 5th, 2019. A7 is the report from the Planning Department dated July 25th, 2019. And A8 is the report from Suburban Consulting Engineers dated August 23rd, 2019. That's it.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. So currently, this is a three-family house. It has a two-bedroom unit, a three-bedroom unit, and a four-bedroom unit. The current parking situation is that there's a long driveway that runs from the street until the corner of the back of the house. That's currently asphalt. The tenants for the 2-bedroom and the 3-bedroom unit park their cars side by side in front, in the entrance to the driveway, directly behind the sidewalk, side by side. This proposed plan would essentially bring the house into compliance with the number of spots required, as well as remove the front parking, which is currently in place. The surface that would be put in place would be pervious pavers. There's additional details that were also added, such as a garbage and recycling shed and things like bicycle and stroller parking. The number of units is the number required by the RSIS standards. There is a variance involved, which is the width of the driveway, which is, narrower than what is normally required. But that is because there's a retaining wall on the edge of the property to one side and the house to the other. Another detail is that there's a large pine tree at the end of the driveway, which we had originally attempted to keep on the plans, but it's simply too close to, the path that would be needed to get to the back, and so it would be removed and a new native tree would be placed on the property.
So the driveway, as the planner has provided us pictures in her report, as it currently exists now, is going to basically stay the same width and provide the whatever access it's showing now.
Correct.
And how does that work for the cars?
It's the current driveway is tight. It's but there is space to navigate it, and currently one of the tenants does park their car down the driveway, so it is possible to access the back through the driveway.
The measurement that you've got in that driveway is 9 feet 5, that's from the house center line, or the edge of the house to the property line, right? Do you have a survey that shows where the retaining wall is?
I believe that the retaining wall is directly next, like that, the measurement is from the house to the retaining wall, and the retaining wall actually is that, almost like double-lined edge of the property there to the back.
Yeah. These are
So
all
the
the
plan is showing that
and
it's
then
on the
this is
property
going
line,
to
so
be
the retaining wall is exactly on the
pavers,
property line.
pervious.
That's correct. I think that's how it was on the original survey, which I,
Okay.
yeah.
And that retaining wall belongs to
that's where
the
it's
neighbor?
is.
Correct. That's correct.
So I have a question. On this picture that we got from our planner, there's this black, is that a pipe or something, that water
It's a
drainage?
flexible drainage because the front of the house has a drain spout that just exited at the front of the house, and that was put there to run the water. Currently the house has some damage because there is no drain on the street, and so it would drain back and pool at the front of the property.
So you want to keep that, it's not very wide for a car to drive down there anyway. You're going to be running over that pipe?
I think,
Or is that going somewhere else?
That's what the house would
I think it's possible, if it is possible to drain to the street. I know there's other properties that do that as well. I wasn't clear on whether that was something that was allowed or not.
Well, our engineer's not here, so.
Well, I mean, at the
Oh.
risk of being a little bit coarse,
Yeah.
it's a little bit of a Mickey Mouse plan, because 9.5 feet, I mean, there isn't the surveyor didn't do it, but even if that retaining wall is 6 inches over, we don't know exactly where that is. That, it's a little bit,
It's tight.
I mean, we have a Commander, a Jeep Commander, and I measured mirror to mirror, and it was like 7.5 feet, mirror to mirror. Now, the mirror's not going to touch on one side, but I mean, if you have a foot on each side, it's a little dicey
I don't know, I mean, it's not, but,
I have personal experience with two houses.
yeah.
One that I lived in and one that my godparents owned. Both had driveways like this. And some of the older properties in town, you know, other older properties in town have driveways like this where it's just wide enough to get that car down there. And if you're off, if you flinch, if you sneeze while you're going down, you know, you got car damage, you know. But it's not unusual, you know, in older with older houses in this town.
Is there lighting in the driveways at night? Is there?
There's a security light in the driveway, and then there's 2 security lights in the yard as well.
They go on, are they motion lights that
Correct.
they go on when, to help if you're driving in and out of there in the
That's
dark?
correct.
Okay.
Do all 3 tenants, can they all enter from the back?
Yes, so there would be, there's actually the deck there that's existing.
Yep.
And then there's stairs up, and that would be the entrance from the back, yes.
For all 3 tenants, so they don't have to come park in the back and then walk to the front to get in?
No.
Okay.
And the spots that are shown, I guess, clear on the diagrams, that's grass or dirt or pervious material as opposed to your pavers.
Right.
Which part would,
On the diagram
Yeah.
that we see on the site plan, we have areas that are filled in and they're hashed, like, you know, hashing is covering them. In the rear yard, and also on the side yard, and in the front yard. And I'm just trying to figure out, I thought when I started, you know, looking at it, when I thought what was shown in the front and the side, that was kind of grass, I believe like it is now. But then the paving in the back seems similar. It's a slightly different pattern.
right.
But then there's that hash, and then there's areas that are clear where you have shrubbery delineated, but it's just no hash at all. So just trying to understand, are those planting boxes, are those, I know you have the deck depicted in the clear area, but just trying to figure out what's there besides the pavers.
Sure, so I think what the architect did was the front yard grass, which will remain grass, as well as the right side of the house there, is going to stay grass. Unfortunately, the pavement in the back appears to be very similar, but everything behind the house that's dark will be the pervious pavers, and the clear will, excluding the deck, I guess, will be the existing bushes and shrubs and trees that are currently on the property.
Okay.
And just one thing you forgot to point out is, the benefit of this is you're going to be expanding the lawn area in the front and eliminating the front yard parking.
Correct, yes.
Right, so that'll be a visual
Right, and
improvement.
the rectangle in the front, I see.
So the tenants that you have now, all 3 apartments, how many cars are there currently with your tenants? I know that could change when tenants change, but at this moment in time, how many cars?
So only the 2 and the 3 bedroom are actually occupied. Each one has 1 car, and the 4 bedroom will be presumably able to be occupied if the parking is available.
Oh, if the parking's available.
Yeah, and I think I'll be assigning 2 spaces for a 4 bedroom.
I see.
You don't live at the apartment, at the building, right?
No.
You live in Manhattan. Okay, so it has your address as the building, but that's not, it's true.
No.
Okay.
Do you intend to stripe this parking lot?
If it's required, then yes.
So the compact spaces do need to be designated as such, so whether that's with a pavement marking so the recommendation would be that all the spaces are striped delineation, and then the compact must be delineated either with a pavement marking or with a sign in front of the head of the stall for compliance with the code.
And if you're striping, you don't have to do stripes, you could do a different color paver, but you
Correct.
have to delineate the parking spaces.
Okay.
Anybody have any other questions?
One very technical question. The variance is for 281-9B or just 281-9? And I don't know if that would matter since we are describing that it is for the width of the driveway. Just the way that I see it now in the application is just a variance from 281-9.
On the plan, it says 9-I, I think. I don't know.
Dash 9.
I'll grab my code.
281-9. Two-way driveway.
I think it's here. Yeah, okay. And again, it described it clearly what the variance would be for, the reason for it, but
Sure, I believe the required width, I think, is 20 feet, I think. And this driveway is, or maybe, no, I'm sorry, 12, I think 12 feet, and this is 9.5.
So it'd be 9I,
I thought it was...
the width of the driveway.
Oh, right, yes.
9, the prior are the compliance of the 9 by 19 feet, the full-size spaces are 9B. The exception to allow the compact spaces is 9C.
Right.
And 9E is what I was referring to regarding the compact space marking.
Yes, in each of them, so the application and the note just mentioned 281-9. I don't know if we need to say 281-9I or not, but I didn't want to, I just want to make sure I know what I'm granting a
I think
variance for.
some of them are requirements that will be met,
Right.
but the waiver, which can't be met, is the I, which is the width. The other ones, the
Correct.
compact, the ordinance gives the board the ability to grant exceptions to allow compact parking if it's reasonable. It's really not, if you think it's reasonable, it's really not a variance. But the variance that is required is for the width, which is 9I.
Okay. I was just trying to clarify. Great.
I had one question. The width of the driveway between the house and the retaining, is the 9.5 feet? Is that the only width that's available to you?
That's correct. The retaining wall is not the full height of the car, so I think you do have the ability to have your mirror close to it without touching it. It wouldn't, the retaining wall is lower than the mirror, but the width between the retaining wall and the house is 9.5 feet, yeah.
When I read it and thought that you were in the house, I could see how you could manage the snow and the width of the driveway, but if you're not there, I was just wondering, do you have a plan for how you're going to get the snow removed so that there's enough width when there's snow and on the ground and on either side?
Well, there'll be a company that will, that does the lawn, and they'll also be doing the snow removal.
Yeah, because it's very tight in that case.
You say
So they'd have to push it all the way back, right? You can't dump it on the
Yeah.
street. So you'd have to take that driveway, and I guess you just lose the space
You lose the
temporarily or
space.
something. Yeah.
And do you have to does the service do it manually with a snow blower? You can't get a truck in there, like with the front shovel, right?
You can plow it through, too.
If he was...
You can?
Sure.
No, but I mean, the width of the truck can fit in there? Yeah.
Yeah.
A pickup,
9.5 feet?
not really.
Yeah, I mean, a two-way driveway is 18 feet. So this is half of a
No, but they
two-way
also come with
driveway.
Jeeps. Yeah, the one, rather than so narrow, they had to use a Jeep on the
Yeah.
plow, but
Oh,
And
he
okay.
has a wheel that.
Yeah, you're not going to get the garbage trucks back there.
Big front
But-
loader?
But, yeah, a smaller
Okay.
one. Or you do it, it would have to be done by hand.
By
with the
hand
blower.
with the blower,
You
yeah.
know, and then I think that too, you'd also be able to, either manually or with the blower, put the snow where the grass is on the side and along the edge, along the perimeter. But it wouldn't be just a matter of going in there, plow, and then leave, you know. It would take a little more work to get it manageable, but it's possible.
Okay.
And otherwise, your tenants aren't going to be able to park their cars, and they're going to get tickets.
Yeah, they'll make me do it, yeah.
So I have a question. I think you're proposing a chain link fence in the back.
It was, we changed it to a wooden fence.
Oh, you are? Oh, good.
Yeah, earlier it was a chain link
Oh,
fence.
okay, so that's what was on here.
Any other questions?
And there's that board-on-board fence that's in front of the retaining wall. You know, it looks like there's a green, I'm looking at figure 5 on Janice's memo on page 3. I'm not sure if you've got, you probably don't have that. There's a green, what looks like a chain link, you know, when they put the plastic strips in them.
At the end of the driveway.
And there's a board-on-board fence in front of the retaining wall, or on the house side of that. That must belong to this house, right? That fence?
I'll show you.
Sorry.
Look at this, yeah.
I don't think so.
There's a fence on the inside of that.
He's got the bad side on his side. Isn't that the bad side of the fence?
Okay, so you take that down?
Yeah.
Replace with your new fence all
This is
around.
his fence.
Okay.
His fence, not the neighbor's fence.
So if it's mine, I would remove it. I'm not certain if it's my neighbor or mine, but the intention would be to have the entire parking area blocked from view by the 6-foot-tall wooden fence.
So this is, and I'll get on my soapbox here, this is why having a survey is good. Remember I mentioned that a couple times, when we have someone who can measure these things precisely. Not that, you know, we've got one measurement on what looks like a property line. We're not exactly sure, although you're testifying that the wall is right on the property line. If there were a survey that was done, showing existing conditions with, you know, a couple of more features here, it would be easier for us to sort of understand what's going on. So, and my comment about it being Mickey Mouse might go away because maybe it would all sort of work or whatever. And then the only other thing is, you know, the tree that you're taking out, which is blocking the driveway, that grassy shrub area sort of juts into the driving path. So if you're driving into, like, you get just, your front bumper hits the back of the house, then you kind of have to avoid that, to stay on the pavers, you got to make kind of a quick right, or like you have to veer right, you know what I'm saying? So I don't know if that can be maneuvered, and also when you leave, you're sort of coming around that, you have to avoid, you know, and then your left side of the car could, I don't know.
It's a squeeze.
The intention was to honor the 4 feet of space between the property line and any structure or...
Except in that area, right, except in that immediate area that you're putting in just beyond the house.
Correct.
So, but maybe you just, if that were a little bit deeper into the property, you'd have a little bit more maneuverability. It seems like right after you, again, I don't have all the dimensions here, but it seems like when you pass the house, you'd have to kind of scoot right and left, you know.
I felt exactly the same way, and I think that the strip needs to be
relaxed a little bit.
Right. You're probably going to have to extend the pavers up because you want to have enough room for people to align their car
Yeah,
kind of
good.
straight so that they can go down the driveway straight.
Okay.
And I
Sure.
mean, you're already encroaching into that area, in the area where the tree used to be, so it's not going to make a great deal of difference if you go a few more feet back.
Chamfer off the curb.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the corner.
Unless you want to make driving instructions for the tenants a condition of approval.
Well, I don't think we have to go that far.
That's even better.
You know, the other thing is to limit the size of their cars. But on a more serious note, does anybody else have any other issues or questions that they want to raise with this applicant?
Well, I don't think we answered my question about that pipe on figure 4 or whatever, flexible plastic thing. Is that staying there? You're going to be driving cars up and down there? There could be snow there? Is that
Flexible.
Carmel, you're
flexible
talking
black
about
on figure
that
4.
pipe on the right-hand
Yeah,
side next
yeah,
to the
yeah,
house?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was curious about that,
Yeah,
too.
you
What
need
is
to
that?
You need to do something with that. It's a drain pipe, I think, for the gutters. Is that
Right,
it?
so the gutter for the roof, the front of the roof, it exits at the front left corner corner of the house, right on the driveway.
Right.
And so it was previously just simply letting the water out there. To fix that temporarily, there was like a 50 to 100-foot drain pipe that we attached to the end of the gutter and simply put it back to the backyard.
Right.
To let it out. I guess I did see that across the street, the large apartment building does have a drain that goes underneath the sidewalk and out onto the street, but I know that there's no drains on Hawthorne Place. I wasn't sure if I was allowed to do the same thing and let the water run down.
No.
Okay.
We prefer to manage that water to the rear of the structure as you're doing currently.
Okay.
It could be fashioned in a more permanent manner. Simple PVC
Can you
gutter
bury
piping.
bury it in the front?
If it was buried in the front, it would be buried into a seepage pit in the front that would take the area of the front roof loading for rainfall. Currently, with any approval that might be provided, there would still be the follow-up and resolution compliance of technical aspects of the drainage in terms of quantifying the drainage of the pervious area and assuring that that area would drain adequately through the subgrade. So the detail of the design of the whole subgrade of the pavers is still subject to technical comment.
So, and it's going to dictate a resolution of this issue one way or the other.
And we can marry the front gutter issue and where that drains to the rest of the drainage for the
Because
rear.
otherwise, if he takes this out, then the front gutter issue is going to contribute.
Right.
to
So
the other.
so either the recommendation would be one of two options. A proposed seepage pit in the front that isolates the front of the home's roof coming through that gutter currently and just drain to an adequately sized seepage pit in the front yard, or carrying it through conveyance to the rear like it's done in a temporary fashion, a more permanent fashion, that buries below grade and connects to the subsurface of the pervious pavers, and that subgrade would accommodate the additional depth to carry that flow.
Could you also just relocate the leaders and to the other side of the right side of the house? It sounds like a cheaper.
To the opposite side of the house, you have
Because he has a grassy.
you have limitations of the setback there, in terms of creating an adverse impact to the adjacent neighbor on the opposite side.
I think he has a couple of feet of grassy space on his right side that couldn't he drain into that?
You'll likely receive a complaint from the adjoining neighbor
Saturation.
regarding
Yeah.
a change in flow and saturation in that part of the yard. So to the extent that you can keep it segregated the way it is now, either send it to the back in some kind of drainage accommodation or in the front, but that can be addressed through the technical aspects of the
The
drainage.
seepage pit in the area where you're going to restore the lawn, anyway, I mean, that's.
Perhaps, yeah,
you could
it's a
put it
simple
right there.
prefab unit,
Yeah, drop it in the
relatively
ground.
cost-effective option, as opposed to piping it to the back.
Yeah.
Could he cut his leader off in the front, about 2 feet up, and run a PVC pipe on an angle?
All the way along
side?
the permanency, yeah, that would be more the permanent option of replacing the black pipe.
But then he still has to address a seepage pit in the rear.
Right, so he still has to accommodate that roof area,
Yeah.
which was previously absorbing in the lawn, which is now a pervious paver, so it has to be added as impervious volume to the calculations for the pavers in the rear yard. All of which would be part of my resolution compliance review.
Is what you're describing, taking that off of the ground, that pipe, that black?
Yes.
So it's going to be off of the ground, because
Right.
otherwise, I don't know how it would work in the winter. Right.
Either bracketed to the side of the building
Right,
to
I
get
think
to the
probably
rear,
because
or
there's-
buried and brought to the rear.
Right. Because we're making that an active driveway at this point, and
Right.
you've got ice,
Plowing.
and you could never get that, would be a problem.
So who helps?
Nobody's
him
going to
with-
run over it because it's too close to the house, but
No, I
the
mean,
weather
you
conditions
can't-
will,
You can't get the
ice
snow
and
and ice
snow
off
will.
of it. It'll
will-
have a mound
exactly.
there that
It
you
won't
can't
work
use.
if it's squished.
Exactly.
To satisfy drainage, you start with his architect, and his architect can contact me directly, or the architect may, based on their level of comfort with designing stormwater management, may seek another professional, an engineer,
Okay.
to support that.
Any other questions? Anyone in the public have any questions of the applicant?
Hi, I'm Kathleen Bedoya. I'm at 11 Hawthorne Place in Montclair.
Can you spell your last name?
Bedoya, Bedoya. I didn't think I'd
And is
have...
that the house next door? Or?
Yes.
The
Didn't
house on
think-
the right?
On the right.
Okay.
I did not think I'd have to wait 3 hours to talk here today, but I brought this so that I want to bring to attention what is happening on Hawthorne Place and in the 4th Ward, which is very concerning to me, and we have been there for 10 years. With this parking lot, and we know Andrew, we've welcomed him, and so this is not a personal thing, but with this parking lot, my house, which is a single-family house, is now looking at 4 parking lots. I have a parking lot in front of me, I have a parking lot to the right of me, and now this, which was the only piece of greenery that we had to the left, is now going to be a parking lot. And that is concerning on several levels. One is lighting, because across the street on Hawthorne, another developer has bought a house and leveled their yard and also has a parking lot. So there's street lights that come out right into our bedrooms at night. There is, when I step out onto my patio, I look at parking lots, and it's really affecting my property value. And so I want to know, I understand the limitations that the town is giving him, but at the same time, what about the people that are living here? I know he doesn't live here, and neither does the owner of the developing all around us. Nobody lives there. They're renting to people. But the people that are living here are, all of our green space is being taken away. And so I had questions for Andrew, which we have asked him regarding the lighting, regarding the rainwater is really concerning, to make sure that we're on a hill. So all that water, if that is not taken care of, all that water is going to come into our basement. And we also want to know, we have a very big tree, that if the roots of that tree are threatened in any way, that tree will go straight into my daughter's bedroom. And it's a tree that I've had the town come and look at, because I just want to make sure, I don't want to cut down that tree it would take away any privacy we have. And I'm just a little concerned about what now this gravel and how much gravel that's going to affect the roots of this tree. So those are all, we have a lot of, this 4th Ward and how much development is going on, and how neighbors and people that are actually living here is really impacting my desire to even stay in Montclair. And now the property value of my house, you're trying to sell this house to people that are going to have parking lots that they're looking at. So I guess my question is, how much foliage are we going to keep around the house? How are we going to protect our privacy? Because now if trees are cut or things are cut in order, that other backyard, that other parking lot in front of us over here on Gates, from Gates, without trees, you're going to look straight into our house, all the way from around the corner. So that's also concerning. So I guess those are all my major concerns, is lighting and rainwater and privacy, and how long this construction is going to take. And the snow removal is actually a very valid point, because it is so narrow. I know, because we have the same exact driveway. Snow removal, getting a plow in there would be very difficult. And then for us to have to deal with snow blowers every time it snows is going to be another added thing of the noise that's going to happen every single time it snows in order to get that snow out of there. So is there any way that this parking lot could be smaller, or people can park somewhere else? Or, what are we doing to our homes in Montclair, where the town is dictating entire parking lots being built on these small plots? What is going to become of Montclair? And and what kind of rules will be put in place for people buying property that don't live here and aren't living the day-to-day that we're living, especially in the Fourth Ward, because it seems to me rampant. These parking rules are never, there's our block, you're not supposed to park there. I can tell you every day, and the people here that live here, every night, there's people parked there. So I don't know where they're getting their permits, I don't know why they're not getting tickets, but there's people parked all night, every night there. So why some of this parking can't go on to Hawthorne is, I don't know, I'd like to know, and I know that's not his question, but I guess I wanted to go on record about this. I want the town to know that we are single-family owners. We have children here in the district, and I feel like our needs are not being regarded as much as developers. I've literally had people calling my house asking me if I want to sell my house because they want to buy it at a cheap price so that they can rent. And so those are my questions.
All right, well, you asked quite a bit. A couple of things. The town is not building a parking lot here. This is a property owner, adjacent property. And as you as a property owner have the ability to do things on your property, your neighboring property owners have that same ability. If there's a problem with cars parking on the street, well, this is a remedy that's potentially dealing with getting some of those cars for people who live there off the street. Certainly, if this house is going to be, once it's fully rented, there's probably going to be more cars there. And if it's not a matter of rental, it's a multi-unit house. I don't know, I'm trying to look, I've got a picture of looking at the bird's eye view. You're right next door.
Mm-hmm.
Your house looks just like his house,
Yeah.
but it's a single-family house. It's not a two, you
It's
just have
a
two front
duplex.
doors.
There's another, there's
It's
another
a duplex.
house.
Right, so it is a two-family house, but it's a duplex, okay?
No, I don't own, no, I have one house. It's completely, it's not like his house. We don't rent to anybody.
Right.
Our house.
You share a common wall with your.
We share a common wall, but they're
Right,
two
so
different
you have
titles.
you have a condominium set up with because you own the structure, you both own the structure jointly, right?
No, we don't own jointly.
well,
We have
in any
individual
case,
houses.
in any
It's more
case-
like a townhouse, like two different owners.
Two different,
Completely.
right.
The other
In any
owner's
case.
here. Mhm.
In any case, the property, how many cars do you have in your?
Two.
Two. And your neighbor?
Right now, I don't have any cars in my driveway.
But you have two driveways, a driveway on each side.
Yeah, she
Each-
has
We
her
each have our own.
driveway,
Mhm.
and I have mine.
So
And-
would you prefer that he put a driveway in between your house and his house, just like the driveway sits on the other
Can't
side of
put
your
one
house?
in between my house and his house because I'm on the opposite side.
No, right, I understand that, but I'm talking about, I'm sorry, I can't remember your name. but-
Kathleen.
Kathleen,
Mhm.
but your house, right now you have grass in between your houses. Would you rather him
Yes.
put a driveway there? Because then it would mirror exactly the same situation that you have on your structure. You're both living in one structure. It looks like it's a duplex setup, but it looks just like his house. He just happens to be renting it out, renting out all of the units there. You two own your separate sides of the house.
Well, actually, all three were, the house that he had was a duplex. So it's two duplexes next to each other. And as far as what she's saying about the parking, we have a situation with new people. I've been here for a long time, and we have a situation with parking, the apartment building down at the corner of Elm and Elmwood Avenue, which, as people that have been here for a while know, historically it never had a parking lot, and now they're renting, and people are coming in, it's usually a couple or whatever, and they have 2 cars and they're parking on the street overnight. We have people that are parking on the street overnight, hanging out in the cars overnight with the cars idling.
Understood.
I actually put garbage out one night or recycling. I caught a couple in the car.
I understand your frustration, but
And the
that's
people
not something.
next door are having parties. They put a big searchlight. The lady across the street that she said about the light with the bedroom, she put the light on the 2nd floor. So I'm functioning off of very little sleep, and Kathleen and her husband also.
And-
so it is changing, but not necessarily for the better. And I've been here since 1980.
Understood.
My home.
But we're not the body who can do anything about
Yeah, I understand that.
any of that.
I
You
understand
really, if you wanted to address it, you really need to talk to your council people, talk to the police. There, obviously ordinances that are being violated.
I have talked to Baskerville. I have talked to the police. The people next door have ongoing parties till 5:30 in the morning. All right? They have built a house or put a house behind their house. The men come out, they party. The people come out and they urinate behind the building. She has a young daughter.
I understand all of that, but we're here to talk about this gentleman building a parking lot.
It has nothing to do with
Exactly.
him. I just-
That's exactly my point. And there's nothing that we can do about it. And I understand your frustration. I agree with you, but you telling me doesn't do any good, because there's nothing that I can do, nor anybody here around this
Well, you mentioned
dais.
about the parking. They are allowed parking overnight.
Right, but
I think that after hearing him, they should be able to park behind the house, if that's what it is. But it is gonna be a big difference.
What we want to do is, if we're going to consider this, we want to get him to be a good neighbor to you. And that's what these other people are not being. They're not
and
being
that I
good
understand.
neighbors.
So
And
if we could just
you
address-
have concerns, and I understand, and there's certain things that, the fact that greenery is disappearing, well, it's his yard. And even if he wasn't putting a parking lot, you really couldn't stop him from putting a giant patio back there if he wanted to. But there's going to be a new fence in between your house and his house. Now, you said that you sit on your deck, if I'm recalling correctly. Is it a deck or is it a patio?
It's a deck.
It's a deck. Is it?
It's
so-
raised like his. Mhm.
So if he puts up a 6-foot fence, is that going to provide any relief? A nice 6-foot fence, instead of you looking at a parking lot, you're going to look at a fence. Is that better? Because that's what he's proposing. Also, in terms of the water runoff of the house, that's what we were discussing earlier, to make sure that the water is contained on the property. That's what our engineer is talking about, so that, there's going to be this new impervious surface, and there'll be systems either in the front yard, underneath the front yard, or installed underneath the backyard that will capture this water to keep it from running off the property and doing water damage to you as a neighbor. In terms of lighting, he's talked about motion-activated lighting for this property. And his house is, if I'm his house is up against the apartment building, right?
Yeah.
That's his other neighbor. So that's on the other side. So there'll be motion sensor lighting for the driveway. There might be some low-level lighting in the back, but you'd want some low-level lighting in the back because it's good security for you. But again, any lighting that would be installed back there, a condition of allowing that, would be so that it's shielded, so that it doesn't shine into your house. The people across the street, if they put up street lamps, if those lamps are new installations and they're glaring into your windows, then they weren't installed correctly. Because we're, always requiring that any lighting be shielded. So I don't know exactly what the story of that is, but again, if you can complain to the owners and complain to the town and find out the information, maybe they didn't install it correctly, and you have some leverage there. But insofar as this particular applicant and what he's asking, is he's just simply asking to put a place that, in the back of the house, to get the cars out of the front of the house and to provide parking for anybody who would live in the house. And I don't know, I kind of see it as trying to improve the neighborhood, to try and make it better as opposed to making it worse. And I don't know whether, it doesn't sound like you feel that way, and I'm just trying to get you to think about it a little bit.
If you live somewhere where you're looking out to 3 different parking lots, I think that would be a little different. But I understand that the plan is, and, you know, if there could just, if we could maintain some of that foliage around, like we had talked about with that would definitely help. And then, yes, I understand all the other things are ongoing things at Montclair. But I just want all of you to know that it's not that easy. And I know that you say to talk to different people, and we do. And I called the township, and I've gone through all of and you just don't get anywhere. And I just want this board to know that it's not easy to be a single family owner right now in Montclair.
We all live here too, and I understand. We all have the same kind of issues. I mean, I used to live across the street from the park on Woodland Avenue, from Maple, I can't even call the name of the park now.
Glenfield?
Glenfield Park, yes. And when I first moved there, it was really, really nice. It was quiet. It was beautiful. It was just so like being in the country. And then all of a sudden, everybody discovered that, hey, that's a great place to throw parties on the weekend, to have birthday parties, and to have this going on, and to have that going on. And then late at night, people would be across the street in the park, and they would be yelling and screaming and doing God knows what, and I would call the Montclair police, and they would say, no, that's county park, you gotta call Essex County. And I'd call Essex County, and then 2 hours later, maybe somebody would come by, and, you know, we all have these issues. The point of it is that, you know, squeaky wheel gets the oil. You know, and if you're having an issue and it's not being addressed, you got to keep squeaking about it, but you got to squeak in the right place, too.
But John, just a question. So you had mentioned having some foliage on the side that's next to your house. What specifically would you like to see there?
Just what's there now.
Oh,
Like,
just
so,
don't cut
yeah.
down anything that's there
Yeah.
now. And do you plan to do? So
No,
he doesn't
the,
plan to do anything, yeah.
He's going to put in a nicer fence.
Yeah.
And he's going to make sure that the water doesn't, what else? We're going to make sure that if there's any lighting, that it's not going to infiltrate your yards. What else would help?
The roots of the big tree, are you going to can be mindful of not to disturb those roots?
Well, I think one thing, too,
Is that tree on your
since it's
property, though?
pervious, it's going to be pervious pavement, and that means that water can penetrate it, so that it's not going to be solid. So that should help, you know, prevent any damage or mitigate any damage to any root systems. That if he was going to put asphalt and it was going to cover over the roots or something like that, that might do damage. But if you were doing a pervious surface.
But who owns the tree? Is that your tree or?
The tree is on the drawing, it's on her property, and you can see it right
Oh,
here.
it's your tree.
But the roots come onto
Yeah, but I'm just saying.
Probably come under.
If
you
you're
know,
worried
but
about
the-
limbs falling, that's your problem.
But the pervious surface should allow the water to penetrate to the roots that come onto his property.
There's also a 4-foot area between the property line and before the pervious surface even starts. So I think between the 4-foot wide landscaped area and the pervious surface for the parking area, I think the tree roots should be preserved.
How about if you do this? You know, I looked at the overall zoning plan. The whole block, which goes from Union, Elm, Gates, and Hawthorne, it's 90% R2. His property, the little apartment building next door, and the property in back of yours is R3. So the whole block is R2. So where the R3 abuts the R2, you know, leave a big swath just as a buffer. Because you'd have to, I'm not sure if you can see it on my computer, but.
Yeah, look at that.
Okay, so that's the orangey stuff is the R3. That whole block area is R2. So if it were R2, you would only be allowed 2 apartments.
Right.
And even when you have 3 apartments, 6 parking spaces for 3 apartments is a lot of spaces. I mean, all the development that we're doing in town, we don't come close to 2 for 1. So what I would suggest is that you build 4 parking spaces, 1 each for the 2 bedrooms, 2 for the 2-bedroom. That's in excess of all the development that's occurring. Then the swath of land that, you take out the 2 compact spaces closer to this woman's house and make it all green, make it a nice yard and plant. And that way you buffer the effect of the R3 against the R2.
So then we would need testimony for a parking variance. That'd be a parking variance.
Well, yes, well, we can address that.
Well, it has no parking now, you're improving it.
Well, it's the parking front yard. That's the question I was going to ask.
plan-
Because right now you're
When
living
you-
next door
when
to
you're
a house with
creating
front
the
yard
parking lot,
parking.
then you have to
Right?
comply with the zoning. If he
Is
were to
that
leave it
correct?
alone, he wouldn't need a park, it would be grandfathered.
Well,
because
we
it's
have a
an
variance
existing
for the width of
condition.
the driveway that we're considering, there's no testimony on that. There's a variance that we're considering, it's supposed to be 18 feet, and we're going 9.5, there's no testimony.
He testified to that.
That's what he's testifying.
But professional testimony. I mean, who's gonna, I mean,
We don't
he
have-
could.
You don't
provide
have to,
testimony.
you don't have to
professional
have
testimony.
expert testimony. It's a matter of credibility. Experts
Oh.
lend extra credibility, but you don't have to present expert testimony. It's not a requirement of the MLUL.
All right, well, I mean, I didn't know where to go until I saw the fact that it's R2 everywhere. And I don't know why this house, probably they wanted, it was 3 apartments for a long time. Maybe they just made it R3 because it was already 3 apartments. They
maybe-
didn't want a non-conforming
Are you
thing.
planning to rent the apartment, the parking spots at all? Is that,
No, not,
since
no.
there's a need for parking, no? Okay.
If there's, so, if, I mean, I could, I mean, it would be a little tight there, because they are compact. It's possible that I would rent it out to neighbors if they need it, yeah.
I'm a little.
But the idea, though, is that the parking has to be appropriate for the amount of units that are on the premises. And so that's why you're putting in the number of spaces. That, because if you are going to create something which is not there, then you've got to bring it into compliance with the zoning.
It's got a 4-bedroom, a 3-bedroom, and a 2-bedroom, is that? So
Yes.
it doesn't seem to me that there's an excess of parking, am I?
With these spaces, it meets the parking requirement.
Right,
If
this
you
is
were
what
to
I'm
put in
saying.
only 4 spaces,
Right, so
that would be
It
below.
doesn't seem that it's got an excess of parking. But I'm wondering about the front yard parking. Right now, next to you is front yard parking, and that's going to disappear. Would that help? Does that seem a favorable outcome of this, or not?
No, that doesn't make any difference to us.
So you would rather have it stay in front than to move to the back?
If it meant keeping a backyard, yeah. But, I mean, it's
Well, it
fine
depends
if
on who
we-
moves there, too, because
Yeah.
all those spaces might not be filled.
No, and if we, I think if, I mean, I don't want to not speak without my husband, but I think that if,
Ma'am, and before you sit down, ma'am, could you just put your name on the record, please, because you...
I'm not getting, trust me,
You're-
I'm not getting ready to sit down.
Yeah.
Yeah, just so that...
My name is Linda Rouse, R-O-U-S-E, and I live at 9 Hawthorne Place. I've been there since the late 80s. I've been in Montclair for 41 years. As far as speaking to the neighbor with the light blinking, the motion light is a little crazy than what you think it is. And I have talked to her several times. And as far as the neighbors on the other side, with the parties and all the other things that they're doing or have done, I've had the police there a lot of times, and they has not been very successful. And I've been really, I want to say relentless on calling. Okay? And so I don't, the police came one time and they said that, well, it's after 4 o'clock in the morning, but they promised to turn it down some, if no one's being disturbed. And I talked to Miss Baskerville also, Mrs. Baskerville.
I think you should talk to her again.
I did.
I think you should
I did.
talk to her a lot more.
I probably talked to the mayor, too.
You should talk to
I
him.
probably did.
I mean, I can't.
All those
I can't
suggestions
suggest-
that you
I
have
can't suggest
given.
anything other than that.
No,
because
I'm
those-
just saying.
that they're the-
I'm just saying.
Those are the kinds of
it
people.
occurred. I'm just saying that I did those,
Yeah.
sir. That's
yeah.
all I'm saying, Mr.
And
Wynn.
I know, I hear you.
That's
and,
all I'm
and
saying.
All I'm saying is
And
that I
it
think
is
you should, you
changing.
have to keep doing it.
It is changing. She is absolutely right.
I
I
understand.
need to let them, because I'm not going to be next to, but I think he, you know, at least he's trying to give something to the tenants so they don't have to park. My neighbors on the other side, they park on the front lawn.
Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Julian Della Pena. I live at 11 Hawthorne Place, neighbor to Andrew. I just wanted to mention that I do appreciate the effort in this planning because it does relieve the parking situation, which is a problem, and it does kind of remove cars off of the lot, the street rather, because we've been seeing a lot of violations going on consistently. So I do appreciate this. I appreciate that the design is taking into consideration of water flow. But you had mentioned earlier about how he could have done whatever he wanted to. He could, build a tennis court or,
Well,
'cause it's
with it, and
within reason.
I don't mean that people can do anything that they want to, but certainly things within reason.
Right.
If he wanted to, if he wanted to pave the entire backyard and make it one big deck, well, if he could address the issues, it's possible that he could do that, with the right approvals.
Sure.
I mean, and if he got approval for it, that's, if he wanted to put, an ugly statue in the backyard, he wouldn't need any approval for it at all, as long as it wasn't something that was, shining lights on your property or causing stuff to fall on your property. If it was just ugly to look at, you couldn't do anything about that. I had a neighbor whose garage was completely just falling down. And I had a small backyard in my first house, and I kept looking at his, I put up a fence, and I actually put it up too high, but I put up the fence to block out his garage, because I got tired of looking at it.
Well, sure, because
You
you could do what you need to do
But
on your
it's,
property.
I can't force him, I couldn't force him to fix his garage or paint his garage or, that's,
Well,
it's,
what I'm curious about, so, like I said, I appreciate this kind of approval process, but our neighbors on the opposite side, I'm just curious, they seem to be, doing whatever they want. They've put asphalt and gravel in their backyard. It seems like they're creating a situation that does not seem approved.
Then you need to call code enforcement. Then they've paved it without any kind of approval. That requires my department to get involved. So if they don't have a plan and it's it's not a two-family house, what your neighbors are how many units?
I think it's two families.
Oh, if it's a two-family house, then they're.
It could be three, actually, because we see three entrances.
that one should be an R2
It's an
zone.
R2 zone.
Yeah, so if an R2 zone, then they can.
Well,
If
it
it's-
seems like they're doing all sorts of things in their backyards, and they're connecting to another house on Elm. So they connected the two backyards with asphalt and gravel. And it just doesn't seem like they're allowed to do that. And we tried to investigate who to contact with regards to this, and we're getting nowhere. So, and this is what Linda's talking about. These are the people that, they party all the time, they urinate in the backyard. They're not very respectful to their neighbors, so it seems to me like they're not following protocol.
I'm a councilwoman. I'm the second ward councilwoman. My fellow colleague here is a police officer. This is, are you Sergeant? Detective Singleton. I'm sorry? Cook, I'm sorry. I'm
It's
tired.
late, yeah.
And my colleague Renee Baskerville, we're very receptive to these things. I have it going on in various areas of my ward, too. I hope that you would continue to contact the police and your council people and the code enforcement. I don't think you can connect backyards.
Yeah, well,
that
it's
doesn't-
very clear.
Take a picture.
Yeah.
And bring it to
I
code
don't know why-
enforcement.
Part of the fence out. They took part of the fence out so that they can walk from Hawthorne over to Elm, and they go back and forth all the time.
Well,
They park cars on the lawn, they have parties, they park cars on the lawn, they have cars in the backyard.
Take some
and they
pictures,
bring- they
take
bring-
pictures,
they bring
document,
construction
you know.
equipment at
all
night.
right, please
So what
continue
you're saying
to
is true.
contact the,
Yes.
okay, please do that.
But overall,
Okay.
we approve of, this
Okay.
process, we're okay with
I appreciate
it.
that he came and that he had talked to us and then we got a letter. I didn't get a letter for the house across the street with the strobe lights. Like in the red light district.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. All right, well, I would like to propose an approval of this application with some conditions on it. We talked about drainage. I don't know, Art, have you been keeping track?
I don't really have, the only thing that stands out in my mind is that any lighting in the rear shall be shielded and facing downward.
Right, and motion lighting in the driveway area, compliance with our engineers in terms of drainage and grading and all that. The fencing, board on board, on three sides, retention of all of the current shrubbery, and encouraging you to put some other ones in the area along your neighbor's line to create more of a barrier. Any lighting that's in the back has to be properly shielded so as to not impact the adjacent property. Am I missing anything?
Parking in the front yard?
No parking in the front yard.
With the removal of the width of that driveway in the front, if you did park in the front, you would block access to the rear.
Right. So
Also,
there
they
can't be
talk
no
about
parking at the top of the park.
Didn't we also talk about putting grass in the front?
Yes, well, that's part of the plan.
Right.
That's part of the application, that they're going to fill in so that it's just a single-car driveway. And, yeah, if you're parked at the top of it, you're going to block everybody else in, so you can't, that's not the idea, unless you're just running in to grab something and coming back out, of course.
And anything navigating around the tree?
And, I think we need to allow him to extend the pervious surface to make a better drive aisle for the driveway along the whatever side of the property.
The west side.
The west side of the property.
You can defer that for resolution compliance to my approval.
Yes.
On the list.
Anything else?
The plan had a garbage container. It's in the plan. Yeah.
All right, then I think that covers it. So that's my motion.
Is there a second? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No,
Absten-
I'm opposed.
Okay. Abstentions? Okay.
Okay, carried, thank you.
Thank you.
We have an ordinance.
Yeah, this should be a quick
Referral?
one.
I don't think there's enough room.
We have a referral from the council.
Yeah, and I think there should have been.
The council
buffer. I mean,
last
she came
week
here-
introduced an amendment to the zoning ordinance.
And give her 4 parking spaces. So.
The council last week,
Sorry.
That's such a Mickey Mouse.
The council last week introduced an amendment to the zoning ordinance. You know, when the planning board made their report to the council in support of it, there was a provision in there that if there's any changes,
It was coming back to
wanted
us.
to come back here. And there was one change to the ordinance And that has to do with how to measure average front yard setback. Because right now, we measure it in our ordinance based on the two houses on either side.
Guys, I hate to interrupt, but this is important.
Sorry.
So if we could just finish up this tidbit.
Yeah, sorry.
So right now, it's in our ordinance, we measure average front yard setback based on the two houses on either side of the subject property. The proposed ordinance says that you measure the average front yard setbacks for the houses on 1,000 feet on each side.
Can you please explain?
That's
so.
Yes, exactly.
That's humongous. Where'd that
Exactly.
come from? Like, who's coming up with this?
I'll just say that it was a recommendation from
EDC.
from a person on that, from several people, or one person on the council, or several people on the. It was brought up, and so it was put in this in this ordinance, and the intent was to really get the front yard setback to reflect the neighborhood.
A question though with this language, are you talking about including across the street?
No, it's on the
Both
same side of
directions,
the
but it
street.
doesn't say that.
It does, and within the same block and zone
On the
district.
same street, okay.
Okay,
But
setbacks.
1,000 feet
That's
That's-
100-foot lots.
on either
On
side, so
either
it's
side.
1,000 that way and
Right.
1,000 that way.
Right.
Wait, and is it, but I still don't understand.
To keep the,
Because is it around the block?
oh, yeah.
It's on the same street.
Well, if there's not 1,000 in a straight line, no, you don't have to round the block. But
Yeah.
still,
Right.
I mean,
Still.
it's still, I don't know. I don't know about you, but, maybe we could consider a few more houses, but
Why
not
don't you do
1,000 feet.
3 on each side, if you want to do that.
Also, this has been done before. We should research other zoning, maybe a little bit of money.
I don't think we don't have the time. This has been introduced. This has been introduced by the council. Because you've, this,
Well, we have to
make a decision, we should have the information.
this is your, this is your opportunity before it's adopted to give a report. So I need to get your comments tonight because it's actually the second hearing on this whole, it's a very large ordinance. The second reading will be next month.
Yeah.
And this is the one section that's changed. I think it's very simple. Go back to two properties in each direction, or if you want to increase it to 3.
But 3 at the max,
Yeah.
that's
the
reasonable.
The whole intent is to, the greatest influence on neighborhood are your neighbors.
Yeah.
You hear it all the time.
Yeah.
And so that's why you give greater emphasis to the setbacks of your neighboring properties, not the property that's 10 houses down.
Yeah, I agree.
And I can simply, if we agree, I can make a report back to the council, and maybe when they have the second reading in September, they can go back to, they can change it to something that's more reasonable. So, I don't really want to have to go and, take more time and study other towns. I think it's a very simple answer. Because I think what we
So it's 3
have,
properties that, in the same block, in the same zone?
On either side.
that's it. We've been
3
doing it for
houses on
years.
either side,
I
so that
think it
you're in
works
line with your
beautifully.
immediate neighbors.
I think what we have right now has worked beautifully.
Yeah.
I think it's flexible.
And it flexes too, because if you're very large lots, you need to go probably a great distance. But on Upper
Yeah.
Mountain, there's 50, 60-foot wide lots, and a lot of
Yeah,
other streets.
take
might be
Highland
20
Avenue.
streets
Upper Mountain
away.
Avenue.
Yeah,
Take
but
Highland
I mean,
Avenue, for example.
Yeah, so I just.
Right.
It is limited to the same block, though, like tax
Yeah, but there's
block
long
designation.
blocks. Yeah,
Some
they
of
go
our
on
blocks are
forever.
really big. We have some very large
Carrying,
blocks.
carrying
Yeah.
cross streets.
Yeah.
There's some blocks that don't even have any
Yeah.
cross streets.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes when you cross the street, everything changes. Yeah, and even on the same street, like my street, on one end it's different from the other end, and it changes as it moves,
By the way, Janice, just to understand one last thing here, are there conditions where you would just be a lone house without 1,000 feet based on the zoning, or all the zoning districts and blocks are large enough that you would have?
There's no house
Right, okay.
that has 1,000-foot frontage.
There's no property.
Well, not
That would-
not the frontage, but if you're.
If there was, somebody be trying to buy it.
Solar.
Build a gigantic skyscraper.
Yeah.
You would have to own
I'm
the
just saying if
entirety
you're on
of
the
the block.
corner, but yeah, it's okay. That's fine. I think three on either side.
Max.
Okay, so I'll put the recommendation.
Each zone has a suggested, has a setback in each zone, right? It's
That's usually the minimum. It's
the
usually the
minimum. So
average.
this is where people want to get a variance?
It's whenever there's an application, whenever somebody wants to put something, build something between their house and the street.
So that
or-
they don't need a variance.
So they don't, it's how we calculate what the setback of a house is.
Right,
Oh,
because
so
it's not an X amount of feet.
It's
You want
usually-
it to be comparable to your neighbors.
It's usually 25, whatever it is, it may be 25 feet or 30 feet depending on the zone, or the average setback, whichever is greater. So,
Whichever's greater.
So that you're in line with your neighbors, but as far back from the street, as
the
reasonable.
rationale was
But
because
then
it would
why
be a
isn't
better
it just the
reflection
house
of
on either
neighbor-
side?
of the neighborhood.
Well,
They're just some good
that's the way it is now.
No,
They,
two.
of course, it's two houses, but, if you just go the house on either side,
I've seen it.
it will give you a better perspective, because those two might not, they could be slightly out of line or something like that. I mean, just to give you a
So
better
if that
aesthetic.
second house is even closer than the house in the middle of the two that are further away, this house could jump out ahead of the other.
No, you're averaging. It's the
Well,
average.
even an average would jump out. So let's say that the house right.
There would have to be dramatic, there would have to be a dramatic difference between the two.
Let's say the house next door is, the zone requires 25, the house next door is
Tony, let me
25.
stop that. There's the final sentence in this provision says adjacent principal structures that have a front yard setback of more than twice the average front yard setback of other adjacent properties should be disregarded.
Well, I wasn't going to talk about that, but that's a good point.
So
I'm just saying, let's say that your house, you want to go closer or whatever. The house next to you is 25, and the house on the other side is 25. You have 25, but you want to go closer, because the house on the other side of the guy who's next to you, he's only 15 feet. Now you average those two, you just pushed out 5 feet in front of your neighbor.
But if you're doing three on either side,
Right.
that's
let's
should
say
help
that-
defeat that. It should help defeat that kind of
The
thing.
minimum was less than 20 in your situation.
Yeah, but it's whatever's, the minimum is, we don't have any minimums less than 20. So it's whatever is greater, the average front yard setback or whatever the minimum is, whichever is greater. So and it's typically 25 feet. So really what it does is it's 25 feet, but if your neighbors have houses that setbacks that are greater than 25, then your setback's gonna be greater than 25 to fit in with the neighborhood. That's how it
What
works.
happened that produced this need to change it? I'm just wondering where it came from. There's usually a reason why something like this.
Outer space.
It's because I think the proposed ordinance added that last sentence, that I just read to you, adjacent principal structures that have a front yard setback of more than twice the average should be excluded, which is why I was put in this ordinance change, and in discussion, there was a discussion about why is the front yard setback only two houses on each, so this is a new addition, a new change that I think we need to respond to. Okay,
Yes.
Robin, you understand.
Yeah, there was nothing
You know where
in
this came from.
particular that precipitated it. It
No.
was in general, yeah.
So, okay.
Well, what if we take out the language that was put in, that it maybe that would exclude houses that have a greater setback?
That's not a problem. That was not an issue. The issue is really just the 1,000 feet in each direction. I don't think you should touch the rest of it for right now.
I don't have I got to pass on this one. I don't apologize. I just don't have, I can't say what's right or wrong. But you guys.
Okay, Tony.
We understand.
Yeah.
Okay, that's okay.
We got your back.
Okay?
All right. So it's 11:15, and I move that we adjourn.
Can we pay bills?
The bills?
Oh, if we must.
Okay.
Yeah. I think
Art
there's,
and I
yeah.
have no comment on whether or not you pay the bills at this meeting.
Do we have Keith's approval?
I had no comments from Keith on the bills, so I assume it's okay.
If we had no comments from Keith, and I'm sure he would have commented, then I will accept that as his approval. Keith, it's your fault.
You move to pay the bill?
I move to pay the
I'll
bill.
second to pay the bill.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions?
Okay, thank you, everyone.